distortion around. Okay,
That's
I can hear my. Is it coming?
coming off of Paul's phone.
Right, shall I mute? Is it because I've got my?
Every time, if there's more than one person speaking, that's when all these problems start happening, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some kind of echo coming off your phone.
Yeah, you sound clear to me.
Yeah, Paul,
for
you
the
sound
echo.
clear to me. Alex has an echo, and I hear my own echo.
But it's always Alex that has the echo, isn't it?
I don't
Yeah, you
know.
sound clear to me as well, Sandra.
Yeah, it's the first time I've seen it.
Sandra has the echo too.
What?
The last two.
I've definitely heard it on the last two climate crisis clubs.
Testing. No, I still hear
Yeah.
myself.
Well, Paul has to mute when he's not speaking.
All right, I'll mute and see if it stops. Okay.
Sure.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey, Alex. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yeah, it's
Oh,
amazing.
I don't hear any echo anymore. Poor Paul.
Thank God we don't have to talk about anything serious. I'm tired of all that serious stuff.
Oh God. I saw that Scotland stuff this morning too. Some videos. I was watching the BBC too. That's usually the only news channel that's on my TV either. But it's just one of those mornings, especially after yesterday. I don't know. It's
Well,
really,
Monica,
it's
do you
like
know
I
Monica?
haven't, do I know Monica? I think I do. I'm following her.
Hi, Sandra. Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
how are
How are
you?
you?
Welcome.
I'm fine. I'm just preparing a cup of tea. I love Earl Grey.
Ah, yes, my mother loved Earl Grey.
Yeah, I gotta
Yes.
go find more caffeine myself. So
How are you, Sandra?
I'm good, thank you. I've been having some epiphanies, I guess, if you want to call them, like realizations. You know, when you have pieces of a puzzle and they're rattling around in your head, and then somewhere some information comes to you, and all the pieces fall into place, and you go, "Aha!" I had like
Yes.
two of those moments yesterday, which were both very intriguing and kind of scary, but it was good to have those moments because these are truthful moments. That's the hardest part, right? Is to figure out what the heck is truth. So anyway,
Can you share it with us?
well, it was with Lasso. Were you on the call with Dr. Mike yesterday? Basically, what happened is I know Julian was, I know Alex was. What happened is it clicked all into place for me when he was describing colonialism as an extraction, as the whole capitalism thing, right? That whole capitalistic extraction thing has been, it's I don't know, I know this, but it just clicked for me that this is what humans have been doing for all this time,
Yes.
well, some humans. And it's just, I don't know, it's just it was like an epiphany of, some of the people on the earth, a lot of people on the earth have just been living wrong, so wrong, so
Yes,
wrong.
the entire thing is wrong, isn't it? I look
Yeah,
at Brazil and I think this is how it's been done since it was discovered, and
yep,
nothing has ever changed.
I know, I know.
Well,
I'm and I also saw some grief in the climate spaces. I mean, like climate posting. There was a lot of grief I saw yesterday, and I understand the grief in the climate crisis. Okay, I understand this now very well. That it is very alarming and disturbing, and some people may just freak the F out if they hear the actual things that are going on. I don't know how to fix that problem except to just do a blistering marketing campaign. And that gets into I mean, it would have to be the right stuff, and I mean, we'd probably all get thrown in jail in the new administration, you know.
Well,
So, I mean, I'm ready. I can go to jail, you know. I can go to jail for causes, no problem.
this is what someone mentioned. Actually, sorry to interrupt you, but on X, someone wrote something a while ago saying, "Be careful what you write and what you say here in this platform. You know, you may get in trouble." And I pretty much told them, just go on, come for me. I'm not scared. Fear
Right, exactly.
fear is it's a disease, and it grows if you're not careful, and it's a distraction. I don't think we should be fearful of anything, really. And you know, I don't think this is the right sentiment to have at this point. You know, we have to be brave. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah. I'm,
Yeah, agree 100%. Oh, sorry, Alex. I just want to follow up, Monica. I yesterday I retweeted a post, and I follow a lot of picture accounts just because I need to break up my timeline with beauty and picture and interesting accounts and stuff. Anyway, yesterday the Earth, it's an account called Earth, right? It posts a lot of pictures of Earth and stuff, and sometimes it's relevant, sometimes. But yesterday was a beautiful picture, and it had two words on it: be brave.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, Alex, you can have it.
yeah,
Thank you, Monica.
I'm thinking Brazil, so much lost Sue and some of the other Native Americans yesterday about the English colonization of North America here. And I'm looking at Rio, it's 71 Fahrenheit, 23 Celsius, and the humidity is 84% over in Rio. That I know so much instinctively about the English American colonization. I can literally feel it. But now Brazil was colonized by the Portuguese.
Yes.
And I'm just not Portuguese. That as an American who's never been to South America, I've really never had a good Brazilian friend either, just by circumstance. One of my college buddies after college moved to a farm in Brazil, and he now lives in Lima, Peru, one of my good friends. But I've really personally had little interaction with Brazilians out of all peoples. And again, it was Portuguese colonization. So the one thing I do know is I've seen a lot of Brazilian movies. So
They're
that's kind
crazy.
of,
Some of them are quite crazy, and some of them are
some of
really
them are
good. Yeah.
really brilliant. Yeah. And so I'm talking about trying to introduce Americans to Brazilian environmentalism, which isn't going to be so different than introducing most of the rest of the industrialized nations, like South Africa, say, or Australia, or non-Portuguese colonies, for that matter, former colonies. So, how do we get into this, Monica? Where I say you're a great expert, and then you tell me you're not an expert, but compared to the rest of us, you know leaps and bounds more than we do on the topic. I can call up and
Let me just say that word about Brazilian people. My last account, I used to work for an IT outsourcer, big one, and for an energy company, a pretty big one, and it had nuclear and everything. So we could not offshore the main group in India because of the FERC laws. So I worked. Our team was in Brazil, right? All Brazilians, and they were just the nicest people. So I just want to throw that in there. I've worked a lot with Brazilians, and just in the IT realm, right, in my technical field, and they're funny just like us. They're fun just like us. They do speak Portuguese, but that's a hard language to kind of understand. At least it is for me. So I never tried. And they don't talk Portuguese in front of you. That's like a corporate rule, you know, to if someone comes in the room that doesn't speak that you. But anyway, I just love them. I love them very much, and that crew. I actually miss them, but I could probably text somebody. But yeah, they're good people. The when I saw the floods last year in Brazil, was it last year?
Yes, in Rio Grande do Sul, yeah, the south of Brazil. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, the south part of Brazil, Brazil, and I don't know if that's if that's populated or if it's more rural, but it was just breaking my heart seeing all. It was it was uplifting me and also breaking my heart
Yeah.
seeing all the dog rescues
Yeah.
in those floods.
Yes,
Yeah.
I actually worked in Rio Grande do Sul for a couple of years. I worked for Dell Computers. This is at the beginning of the 90s. Basically, we did the launch of Dell Computers in Brazil, in the south. I was the first employee. And I built a lot of friendship over there. And they say that they're still having trouble because they have no money from the federal government to rebuild the state. And it's in a condition that the airport has just been opened up, and it's a dire situation, and it's likely that this could happen again. And can you imagine that? And this is not an isolated event. Look at what happening in the Amazon. The state of Pará is still very dry and on fire, and no one's talking about it. So yes, and Brazilians are fun. I agree with you. They're a very warm nation. When I go back and visit my parents, and I walk, outside in the streets, and everyone says good morning, hi. You don't even know them, but they just say hi and good morning, which is is refreshing. Obviously, there's the other side of every good situations. You have bad situations, bad people, but it's life, right?
100%.
Yeah. So I was getting at, if we want to talk Brazilian environmentalism with non-Brazilians, matter of fact, people from not Portuguese type countries, we're already facing a big hurdle just at that level. I can tell you most of my friends in my small New England town here just wouldn't know much about Brazil just to start with. And I was talking to Lost Sioux and the Native Americans for hours and hours and hours yesterday, and my mind sort of stuck in the old story of Native Americans and the Native American genocide. Julian was there for sure most of the time. So it takes me a bit to adjust. And of course, Brazil has its own colonial stories and issues. And the indigenous tribes of Brazil are just fabulous and very, very important. Those are people that have lived in the rainforest for tens of thousands of years. They've coexisted in the rainforest. They didn't destroy the rainforest. They didn't put malls everywhere. They didn't kill the land. They coexisted. Everybody thrived in the rainforest for tens of thousands of years. And they're still there. Then we have our modern nations. We are post-colonial. England and Portugal are not controlling their empires anymore. We have Brazil, a gigantic country. I see 210 million people. I see most of the people on the coast. When you talk the north and center west of Brazil, it's something like, I think it said 21 million. It's really very empty. In the heart of South America, there in the middle of the country, there's just tremendous wilderness, rainforest, trees, animals, plants, all of it, mushrooms, single-celled organisms, a tremendous ecosystem there. Environmentalists naturally value ecosystems. We don't want to see all the trees cut down, the whole thing cemented over and made into a mall. That's what some people actually do want to see. We're against those people. It's got to be very clear. It is us versus them. It's not, we can all sit in a prayer circle together and somehow work this crap out. If we do that, we can sit in our prayer circle. They will cut down all the trees and pour cement over the whole goddamn thing. I guarantee it. And then they'll put up all the malls, and then you'll work in the mall. And with the money you make working in the mall, you can buy your food at McDonald's and be in debt. That's their plan. We did early this year, we did a heavy Hawks versus Dove segment, and we agreed to coexist. Well, I can't help it. I'm permanently hawkish, and I don't want to see that happening to Monica's rainforest there and all those indigenous people. Of course, I know almost nothing on the topic. I'm just good at making up these speeches to try to frame the discussion so everybody knows what we're talking about. I know Monica talks about the BR 319. As long as I live, I will not forget the BR-319. You put those roads through the wilderness. In America, we got roads like nobody's business. The Ford in the 1910s and 1920s, they stuck roads all across America, and clearly the path to cementing over the rainforest starts with the roads. I'm glad to see Wilson here. I know for him it's terribly early in the morning. Wilson, have you ever been to South America?
Actually, no, I haven't, but I've had quite a few South American friends over the years. One of them, actually more than a few, were Brazilian. And you know what? They have been some of my best friends because their attitudes are like so easygoing, and they just love to crack jokes and everything. So it's great to have them around. They're also pretty skilled at the stuff that they do. One of my friends is an artist, and he draws some amazing stuff. I was surprised by his artwork like way back when I was like 17. It was super cool stuff. And so it's kind of interesting too, because one funny thing is occasionally he asks me for artwork supplies. I don't know why, but for some reason he can't get the kind of variety that we can get here in the United States. So I have to like ship things to him, and it is some crazy fees in order to ship out to Brazil. I'll tell you that. But I was gonna change the subject actually here, because you know what, I'm going a little nuts. So reading the news this morning, we have yet another listeria outbreak, and I'm going crazy because like all year it's been outbreak after outbreak after outbreak of just people being hospitalized constantly over food, right? We've had salmonella outbreaks, we've had listeria outbreaks, we've had freaking E. coli. Literally yesterday they're just recalling ground beef. That should be a win for us, right? But I'm about to get into that, right? They just recalled ground beef, and now today they're recalling ready to eat products because even though these cooked, apparently they still contain listeria. So you wouldn't want to eat that unless you heated it up to the proper temperature again, just to kill all that surface bacteria. But one thing that drives me nuts is literally for all these outbreaks coming out, why hasn't anyone brought up the fact that this stuff is definitely caused by climate change? The increase in diseases, that is definitely caused by climate change. Small differences in the temperatures has huge impacts on people's and animals and plants, immune systems. And so, we're more likely to see diseases like this. And even in doing just a little bit of research, right? Salmonella outbreaks, right? One thing that causes salmonella in eggs is if the shell is weakened, right? And what causes chickens to lay eggs with weakened shells? Well, it's actually definitely the climate, right? The increase in temperatures just make chickens have to focus more on their own immune systems without, you know, having to spare all that energy to create the eggshell inside of them. So, like, that's just what happens, and it really blows my mind. I feel like there should be a sticker at this point on every news report that says, like, you know, caused by climate change, affected by climate change. Everyone should know that, you know, we're seeing all these outbreaks of diseases in our food this year, and it can be due to stuff like just like flooding. Flooding can introduce sewage into our food, you know, into our food sources. That's a source of freaking, you know, bacteria, right? All that can continue growing on the plant to the point where it's like, hey, I'm gonna have some salad full of raw vegetables, and you know, it's just gonna be bacteria central. It really worries me, and it really concerns me, because it's like, you know, this is the stuff that we're starting to see. And you know, it's one of those things of like, if we continue down the line that we're going, it's going to get worse. We have to make changes. And I feel that everybody would agree that we would absolutely like to make changes, a lot of changes, very quickly. You know, we would like to see that so bad, but you know, we're on the defensive side of these years. So what we're gonna have to do is preserve everything as much as possible. You know, and that's one of the things we have to do too, is, you know, preserve our relationships, man. You know, and that's just me. That's where I'm at right now, is like, I feel like everyone should just be concerned about the fact that we're seeing lots of, you know, crops, we're seeing lots of different products have, you know, disease outbreaks with them, and those are serious, man. You know, just salmonella alone affected people in more than 12 states, you know. So for me, I honestly don't know how I would correct that, unless, like, you know, I wanted to, I don't know, you know, raise plants in greenhouses or something like that, you know, or raise animals in greenhouses, you know. But yeah, I think I'll just land my plane there. Thank you.
Thanks, Wilson. What am I thinking? I'm thinking of Dr. Mike, who is a nutrition expert, and he was asking me about climate and health. Yeah, food is a bottom line, non-negotiable issue. And
I think we still need to worry about the war, though. I mean, war. Didn't someone say starvation is one of the reasons people go to war?
sure.
Because if China can't feed itself, and Southeast Asia can't feed itself next year, what's going to happen?
Right.
Wars.
We can
Yeah.
run models about the future till the cows come home. Monica is here. I am looking at Brazil, 210 million people. You know, this is a powerhouse country. Brazil is it's a powerhouse country. They're hosting the G20. This isn't the 1970s anymore. The Soviet Union's long gone. We got the three big blocks. We got the United States, EU, and China. That's about 75% of the world's economy. But out of the remaining 25%, you've got Brazil. They've got 210 million people. They got a huge GDP. They're eating a lot of meat. They're cutting down a lot of trees to make grazing land for cattle. And they got a river that has 26% of the world's river fresh water in it. It's the biggest river in the world. When I watch the news and the globe spins around, when they get to the South African continent, I see the Amazon. And Monica grew up in Brazil. That's her homeland. So what is it, Monica? The BR319? What are they doing?
Well, we all know what's going on from the last talks about BR319. A lot, some forms of diseases like Wilson was mentioning, and viruses, bacteria, fungus are coming out of the Amazon. We've seen what's happened to dengue, and now there's a new virus called Oropushi. I don't know whether you've heard about it. So climate change obviously is playing a huge part in this, and the droughts and deforestation, not just deforestation, degradation as well. The land use change, making room for cattle farming, and also the animal and human mobility is all creating conditions to the spread of so many viruses around. And what's happening lately is that the last month there was a study that was published by Nature saying that the Oropushi virus has already infected over nearly 6,300 cases recorded between 2022 and 2024. And this is being detected in this hotspot for the deforestation in the Amazon called the Amacro region, which is an acronym for the Amazon, the state of Amazon, the state of Acre, and Rondônia. So it's been already detected, and this is a very, very concerning issue. And another one is around BR319. It's a road. They want to reconstruct 402 kilometers of this 885 kilometers highway in the middle of the Amazon. So and because of this highway, there's a lot of degradation around, and a lot of illicit roads have been caved into it by illegal logging. And there's been an increase of 400% in malaria cases around it. So we can see what can happen if this highway goes ahead, and it's not a good scenario. But there are other things being developed lately, which is basically the latest development of a meeting after the G20 conference. Well, please don't get this wrong, but this is my view, my take on what's happening. Okay, we should pay attention, because Brazil's increasing alignment with China since Trump's election. We've seen that happening lately. And Lula, Brazil's president, has strengthened his ties with Xi Jinping, and he has signed dozens and dozens of agreements in various sectors, okay, in the last year or so. And after the G20 conference, more deals were made between these two countries, Brazil and China, and indicating that Brazil might join, after all, China's the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. Okay, and this partnership, in my view, is very troubling, because it's basically designated to streamline the flow of Brazil's natural resources to China. Okay, and there are numerous serious concerns about this, including the economic independence, sovereignty, and the influence of this autocratic regime on Brazil's policies. Okay, freedom of speech, freedom of information. What's going to happen to journalism? And this project, the BRIs, there's something else happening on the sideline. Okay, I'm going to try to explain and make some sense. A recent project has been signed between Peru and China to build this port called Chancay Port, located about 80 kilometers from Lima, and is set to cut shipping times to China to 23 days, and reduce costs, logistic costs by 20%. Okay, it's connected to the Pan American Highway, and which eases, facilitates the exports of commodities from South America to China. But there's something else here. In Brazil, there are highways like BR-319, and if you look in the map, BR-319 and BR-364 play a similar role into this, because BR-319 would connect to BR-364, linking Acre, the state of Acre, to Peru. Okay, and this will enable the flow of commodities from that region, from Brazil, from Peru to China. Okay, and this expansion would affect the environment naturally, and many indigenous communities. Okay, and if you look on the map, BR-364 crosses an area below the Valley do Javari. I don't know whether you're aware. Valley do Javari is a very dangerous area where Dom Phillips and Bruno Pereira were shot. They were murdered. So this is a very concerning development in the region, because all these highways would connect with each other, and the only reason they will exist is profit, is money from all these sectors and industries. So it would be catastrophic if that happens. And if Brazil joins BRI, I don't know what's going to happen to the Amazon. We may just say goodbye to it, because it would demolish everything in front of it. There are some developments about COP30 that I can share with you later. But this is the only concern that not the only one. It's among many concerns that we have in the region.
Interesting. Of course, as an American, talk of highways, I understand quite well. And I see the BR-364 along the western border of Brazil there. Let's ask Julian what he's thinking.
Hi, Alex. Hi, everybody. Hi, Monica. Hi. Robert, I particularly want to, and I saw you had your hand up before me, but I kind of, what I want to say just now is something that I'd like all of us to keep in mind, this kind of important development that has just taken place in Mexico, which I can sum it up really quickly. Essentially, GM corn and glyphosate will now be allowed in Mexico. The government hasn't announced it yet, but it's absolutely a fact. This is coming to Mexico. It's going to happen. The reasons for that are complicated. The ineptitude of Mexico's negotiating team and the scientists they brought on. Well, I'm gonna put the scientists in quotation marks, because really they were useless. That annoys me so much. Obviously, as a Mexican citizen, I'm thinking, like, Mexico had a really good argument, but we just could not. You just failed at putting up a good case. Okay, but let's just leave that to one side. The fact is that this is happening. For me, that the threat of biodiversity there is huge. I've been engaged in a lot of discussion with GM proponents, and not a one of them, like my question to all of them tended to boil down to, can you ensure that biodiversity in Mexico will not be affected? And not a one of them, could say no, because they don't have an answer. And it just seems insane to me that a giant, massive bio-experiment of this kind will be conducted now without previous wide-scale studies. I mean, there are so many options to herbicides, to pesticides. There are so many other ways to conduct agriculture, and we know about them. We know about the myriad varieties of Three Sisters-based agriculture that there are, and there's not just one. They adapt to every region, that don't require pesticides, and they're currently in use. I mean, I have access to a number of Mexican government websites. If I can find it now, I'll post. I believe there is native corn throughout 45% of Mexico's whole region, mostly in the south. There are at least 100 varieties of this native corn, and we really, really would want them to survive. So that's basically the big news. GM corn is coming to Mexico. Glyphosate is coming to Mexico. It's a huge region, and I'm quite concerned about it. Thanks all for listening.
Absolutely, Julian, and always a topic there. I listen to all these topics. Wilson in the food, Monica the highways in Brazil, Julian the GMO and corn in Mexico. I've had Mexican friends. I've talked to many Mexicans, and what in the United States, we just spray everything with pesticides and eat it all, and then bioengineer everything and pray to God that we don't kill everything. That's how the American character. We're completely insane. That's fine. That's who we are. I'm not sure that's how the Mexicans are. And Julian presents a very sensible case. And GMOs and pesticides and glyphosate are perpetually on the schedule. The corporations do not want us exploring that territory. We talk to the regenerative agriculture experts. We talk to Jim, and we keep researching that. I haven't researched it to my satisfaction. Let's go back to Monica while we're waiting for Robert to figure out his connection. Hi.
No, I just wanted to add, following Julian's, speech, that Brazil, 90% of all corn in Brazil is GM. Okay, and now recently, at the end of October, what's happened is that they're waiting for approval of GM in potatoes, papaya, rice, and citrus. Citrus fruits, oranges, and all sorts. So this is, instead of getting better, is getting worse. and Brazil is also one of the biggest pesticide users in the world. At least 25% of pesticides used in Brazil are illegal, and they come via Paraguay from China, and they come via Paraguay, and they enter Brazil via the black market. 25% is just staggering. So I just wanted to add that on Julian's thought.
Yeah, I know the Mexicans are rather sane. I don't know if the Brazilians are rather sane. As a matter of fact, Brazil and the United States seems to have an awful lot in common. We know from talking to Ed, and there is Ed, as a matter of fact, speaking of Ed, that regenerative agriculture is a sustainable agriculture based on indigenous ways is a good way forward. As a matter of fact, it'll probably work. It'll probably, if we start cutting back that food waste, that's 35-40% of the world's food, we don't need to have such crop yields. By bombing everything with pesticides and whatever, cranking up the crop yields, and then throwing away all the food. That's what we're doing. That's the neoliberal capitalist model, whatever you want to call our economic system, that produces ultra wealthy, and certainly 70% of Americans can't even come up with $400 in cash. Our crazy economic system is related to our crazy food systems, and we've heard from Ed many times on pesticides, GMOs, regenerative farming. There are methods of sustainable farming globally. It's not complicated. And then there's the Hosking doctrine that we all follow religiously. Great job, Robert, on Andrea's space.
Thanks, appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Eloise loved it. She even loved your hair, man.
Wild, actually, at that time in the morning, I have to say. It certainly had taken a life on of its own. I have to it was ready to take off, leaving me behind, I think. If I can.
If you can.
Oh no.
This is amazing.
It's at the perfect moments.
It's just amazing, this app. How did Robert manage to do a video call on YouTube with no problem? And in this crazy app, it's enough to make you believe in that ghost of Elon stuff. The XAI just doesn't like Robert. I think there's no doubt. The video call is so much more bandwidth.
Continue speaking. I don't know whether you can hear me, Alex. Anyone? If you can, let me know.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Good.
Yeah, anyway, I'll
Yes.
try to carry out. I've got the connection. I think that interview with Andrew was perfect. I tell you why, because it was just a different connection system that I was engaged with, and it just worked perfectly. I never had a single glitch with it. I was on with Andrea on that interview for an hour and a bit, as you all know, and not a problem. And then when I come on this space, it's glitch after flaming glitch, so it is weird. Anyway, if I can, I know there was some vital points here from Monica and from Julian about this ongoing crisis to do with the Amazon and the Brazilian rainforest and Lula's involvement. In my opinion, Lula, of course, is playing a deadly hand. He has blood on his hands and will continue to have blood in his hands with the situation that's increasing the way that it is. I'm afraid to say that his actions are totally morally unacceptable for the ecological fabric of the Amazon rainforest. They're completely unacceptable to the Brazilian people. They're completely morally unacceptable to humanity on our planet as a whole. Never mind the people of Brazil and of the ramifications and the consequences for what is going to happen to the Amazon now are far-reaching. We already know that the critical and paralyzing situation of the Amazon rainforest right now is one so dire and so deadly. The future survival of that rainforest is really hanging in the balance to such an extent now that the general public globally do not realize just how deadly the situation is for the Amazon. The survival of species within the ecosystems of that forest, the survival of the landscapes and of the indigenous people who inhabit that forest, the survival of livelihoods is so in the balance now, thanks to the decimation, not just of the ongoing burning of the Amazon rainforest and the destruction of corporates that have blanketed their hand of continuing to wipe that forest out and to wipe the people out that live in that forest, and to wipe out the ecosystems that inhabit that forest is so dire now and so all-encompassing that I do honestly believe that emergency global laws of the highest powers available must now blanket the Amazon and safeguard it. And I honestly believe now there must be emergency laws that overthrow anything that Lula can throw at the Amazon rainforest. I mean powerful emergency laws in order to safeguard what's left of the Amazon rainforest and everything that inhabits those landscapes. There must be emergency laws. It is as simple as that. And when I talk about emergency laws, I'm talking about laws that must now be blanketed from as many global courts that can bring this active legislation now to safeguard the Amazon as possible. I know in the course of my work on X, just diversifying for a second, I still call for the most powerful emergency laws to safeguard the Congo rainforest, and I will continue to do that. And I'm continuing to do that in my capacity of the work I do on X for the Amazon rainforest, and indeed all rainforests across our planet. But the plight Amazon is what we're talking about here, and I don't want to diversify.
The diversity,
Again.
isn't it funny?
Yeah, weird,
but
isn't it?
it gives us a chance to unpack and process everything he's saying, and
Yeah.
that that Hoskin doctrine is incredible. He keeps the spirit, he keeps the drive and determination, the willpower, and how I don't know.
Sorry, Monica. Well, did you have your hand up then? If you did, I better let you
No,
speak.
no,
No.
you were no, I just wanted to add, you're so right. And sometimes I'm really cautious about what I say, but I'm going
Thank
to
you,
say,
Monica. Yeah.
but first of all, without the Amazon, we're not going to be here. Okay, this is
Absolutely. Yeah.
how urgent this issue is. And second of all, I blame the mainstream media for not reporting more on the issues affecting the Amazon. Okay. Third of all, Lula, I don't know, he's a hypocrite. Basically, I have to say this, he's a hypocrite. He went up, when he was elected, he went up the ramp in Brasilia, holding the hands of indigenous communities, okay? And he keeps doing that. And he's using them to go forward with his agenda, which is oil exploration. He said he's going to exploit every single drop of oil in Brazil until there's nothing left. Okay, he's supporting BR319. He's supporting the expansion of biofuels, basically ramping up crop production for energy. Okay, it will be devastating for the Amazon because this is terrible. Yeah. And he is friends with JBS, okay, the biggest meat packer, meat company in the world. He's there are some rumors. I can't say this because I'm not allowed to say this, but there's some rumors about a very, very deep link between JBS and him for many years now. One of his sons is directly linked to the company. So there are so many wrongdoings, and he is such a hypocrite. Okay, absolutely. And I say it out loud. So you are exactly right. And the mainstream media, I begged them to report on BR319. They refuse to talk about it. They refuse to talk about anything about Brazil.
Absolutely, Monica. Yeah. Thanks, Monica, for that vital point. So I hope I'm not interrupting you, but I do want to say something before Julian has his hand up. And I will say this to add to what I've just said on my take on the Amazon, the crisis in the Amazon. As I said, Lula's got blood in his hands. And I will honestly say that his government and everyone that he's in manipulation with corporates and be it companies and whatever, that is causing the ongoing destruction by the second of the Amazon rainforest and everything across that landscape. He will have to be accountable for it sooner or later. And whether it's sooner or whether it's later, I think will depend on the force of the gravitas necessary in order to make him accountable for it. Okay, he's a leader of a country, yes, but nobody is above being accountable at the end of the day, not in my experience. And I will say that in my opinion, I think it will be necessary for this ongoing genocide of these landscapes within the Amazon and everything that encompasses, that he will have to have some sort of trial put against him for what he's actually doing, because the betrayal now is so universally and so unequivocally massive that it cannot be swept under the carpet. I continue to blame world media for everything to do with the lack of reporting on climate and everything to do with the lack of reporting on the Amazon. And I will continue to do so with every capacity that I have within me. The world media has blood on its hands. It knows it. And it's as simple as that. It is not reporting unequivocally on the crisis that's blanketing our landscapes across our country, from country to country. I won't have it. I won't stand for it. And that's why I continue to push with everything I have for the world media to finally be accountable. It's more than waking up. It's gone beyond waking up. It's far, far more than that. It's now actually, how can I put it? It's willful It's beyond ignorance, because a lot of the media know damn well what is going on now. The information is all out there. Climate science is out there. The information on the disintegration and the degradation of country to country on climate and from forest to forest. All the data is out there. There is absolutely no excuses for willful ignorance and not reporting on these issues now. And when media does not report on these issues, it is for very good reasons. I've said it before. Silence is a very powerful thing, paid by billionaire oligarchs, which are running the whole show of the media still. And that is a very, very, very tough thing to break. But break it, we will and we must, if we want to be able to encompass media voices of the like, of reporting on the scale of these events that we've never seen before. These things must be forced. The issues must be forced, because in my opinion, only forcing the major issues makes that change necessary. It is needed now to be able to how can I put it, redefine the boundaries of what is acceptable and what isn't. We have seen decade after decade of media brushing environmental disasters under the carpet. I won't have it. Nobody here will have it. And I don't expect it to continue in the long term. And that is one of the major reasons of some of the work I do on X, of pushing media to the limit of understanding what it has to do. It has a duty to not just the ecological fabric of our planet, to report it to the state of affairs to the people. It has a duty, I would say, to put this information across as clear as possible to everyone that needs to understand this. The media have failed and failed again, and it's one of the crimes, actually. I will say this, that I feel now to such an extent that media can actually go on trial for actually denying the public and denying people the access to information for what they rightly deserve. And I will say that I would expect to see such trials taking place if there is what I would call clout and accountability to a level that we've not yet seen. But we will see it. It's just a matter of time now. But we mustn't be lax in our ability to push these issues, these big issues. Before I started speaking about anything, I was actually going to start talking about finance, but it was Monica's vital information here, talking about Amazon, that actually brought me to the information that I've just shared with you now and my views on it. I had to give a view on the Amazon situation. I follow it with great, how can I put it, with an all-encompassing terror, amongst other things, of the level of disintegration and the level of collapse that is taking place across this region. So I just had to say my bit and my take on what's going on with the Amazon. I'll leave it there for now, because Julian's got his hand up. I know he wants to speak, and I can come back. And I will be talking about the £250 billion worth of COP finance over the next up to 2035, and the joke views that I see it for what it is, because this COP finance situation, this conference tested my patience for way too long now. It does not have any ability to be able to function, not just for the people of our planet, but for communities and countries. And I intend to see this conference called out for the utter disgrace that it is. It must be redefined now, but I'll save when I talk about it at a later position. So
first of all, completely agree with Robert. The media is and vital issues such as the ones we're discussing. If you do a search, for example, a Google search, GM corn is coming to Mexico, you'll find 2 or 3 tiny articles hidden away in the back pages of random newspapers. You'll find nothing. Is this important news? To me, it seems like it should be front page news, at least in the Mexican press, but it isn't. Nobody seems to care. It doesn't matter. For a long, long time, the slogan is gone. Without corn, forget about that. The corn, the country, GM corn is coming to Mexico. But an important point that Monica was making, Robert as well, is follow the money. Who had the argument, which is kind of, it's one that you have to rebate somehow. GM corn is extremely productive. You don't want people to go hungry. There you go. These fruits are going to be like wonderful for everybody, and we're going to save the world from starvation. Okay, using GM corn. Personally, I believe we can save the world from starvation without that, but that's of Claudia Sheinbaum and the government of Lula certainly portrayed themselves to be extremely close. They consider themselves to be close personal friends, or at least that's what they want the public to believe. Their policies are highly aligned all the way down the line. This includes the relationship with China. There's a very important trade negotiation ongoing, the NAFTA, which is now called UCMCA. I have no idea how you'd go around pronouncing that. So we can call it NAFTA for all intents and purposes, is now being renegotiated. There's a significant possibility that these negotiations will break down completely. Mexico may leave NAFTA. NAFTA is a business-oriented agreement. I've never been a huge fan. It's an agreement that favors the wealthy rather than the most. It always was that way. It's a trade agreement. But however, once you've created such an agreement, and if it breaks down completely, the results can be catastrophic in every way. An increase of tightening at the border, for example. We're seeing a lot of evidence of how environmentally damaging the barrier of the border is for creatures that migrate north and south. I mean, for example, the jaguar, which once had an incredible range all the way from Arizona, all the way through Mexico, all the way down into Central America. The corridor through which the jaguar moved was essential for its survival, and we are blocking it more and more by setting up trains. The transoceanic train system is a whole other subject in Mexico that is going on right now, and that involves significant violations of indigenous people rights along the path of that train. That's happening right now, and it's a whole other subject that you will find nothing about in the news. You can search, you can do one. They don't have to release environmental impact assessments. They don't have to release human rights violations. They couldn't care less. They're an army like armies are throughout the world. And yeah, now I'm rambling a bit, so I'll stop. I'll let somebody else speak. Thanks.
Awesome, Julian. And I enjoy thoroughly listening to you. I got no problem if you want to ramble on. Mexico, too, is a terribly important player in the global ecological environmental world, the fourth largest biodiversity in the world, et cetera, et cetera. And I really love those jaguars.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Lost. Time to rock and roll, my friend. I had El Jefe, the Jaguar. I think I still have him. I've had him since 2016 on the backdrop of my Facebook page. El Jefe, the boss. Major League Jaguar. I'm delighted Sandy's with us. Loie loved your show last night. She was really into it. Allison Frank, a climate refugee from North Carolina. Hurricane Helene slammed into our American southern coast. Place was wrecked and she had to move. We heard her story last night. Sandy was the and Loie loved your show. She was talking about this morning. You know me, I enjoy the Environmental Coffee House no end. Loie thinks it's like her show. She gets really excited now. 9 o'clock Tuesday, Friday. She's ready to, watch her show. She doesn't even pick up the tablet the whole time. I cannot read Sandy's mind yet. I know she knows practically everything in the universe about environmentalism, and I don't know what she's going to tell us. I don't know if she can hear me, for that matter. This crazy app. I
don't know everything at all. At all. I don't know anything, but I'm here learning. And good morning, everyone. Robert, you're amazing. Okay. You're all amazing. But I'm going to be brief because I like to listen because I have my own platform to blab on. When I listen to all of this, there's a few things that go through my mind, and some of them are controversial. I was born in a time when the Earth had 3 billion people. And so now population is, I say bottom line is there's too many people. I'm not a eugenicist. I'm not a nihilist. I'm not one of those that, likes any of it. But there are too many people, and that's why we see a lot of the things happening. I have a book to suggest called Stress Are Us by Dr. Gregory Michalik, and he does an extensive piece of work there, and his links and his bibliography is amazing. Okay, and none of us are saying that this is in a negative way. It's everywhere in the world. It's not just one part of the world, number one. And it's the bottom line for that is women's rights, which are being eroded worse by the day. United States, there will be no choice. So of course, the religions, and I'm not putting anyone down. Again, I'm just being objective here. They will tell you to keep having babies. It's a man's world. Women's rights are on the brink everywhere. So that's something I see as one of the bottom lines to all these problems. But when you listen to what's going to happen in Brazil, and you see that Lula, people want to tell me all the time, anybody that wants to be a leader is a psychopath. And I say, well, it's not. But then, when you listen to this, and we were so upset about Bolsonaro, and now you see Lula doing almost worse. How do you not feel that way? And so between Brazil and the Arctic permafrost thaw, Arctic ice melt, Antarctic, how do you not be a doomer? I'm sorry. Although the big picture is bleak, I'm completely behind permaculture and reforestation, all the great, wonderful environmental things that can be done. But just listening to this show, Climate Crisis Club, today solidifies that, well, how do you see the big picture changing? And I hate being labeled. I really don't like being labeled because it's uncomfortable, but it is what it is. So I just wanted to say that. And I really appreciate all of the work that all of you are doing. It is selfless, giving, caring. Robert, I want to have your voice on. There are so many people here. This is the only reason why I'm not leaving this platform. This is the only one. Because my safety, I feel, is very important. And I've said that once Leon takes the blocking function and the muting function away, my safety is compromised because I have a YouTube channel and people, it's easy to find me. And so that was, another reason. So I'm pretty much finished. But Alex, you're just very kind. way too kind. I am just a tiny pinhead of knowledge compared to the vast quantities out there. I'm just people that I share, their writing, the stories. That's what it's about. It's not about me. Just like Bernie Sanders, not me, us. Then I'll end with that.
Cool. You still know a hell of a lot compared to 99%.
Hi, can you all hear me now?
Yeah, Lost, man. We got to go to Monica here. And I'm commenting on Sandy.
Alex, you there?
I am here, man. I am definitely here. That guy, man. So, Sandy, great. So, Sandy, why I'm not a doomer? You said what that the summer of 1980 said what and ice is melting, so they're fucking spraying plastics and pesticides. They're killing all the whales, cutting down all the rainforest. Ask Wasu. They killed all his people and tortured them, all of them. You know, a little plastic spray around, a few pesticides is no big fucking deal. We're gonna do this thing. We got great.
And I saw Lasu drop down. I saw some others.
Yeah.
Because we have more than 10 speakers.
We got 10 speakers. I will
No, we got more than 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We'll deal. No problem. I can dump the climate crisis.
And I just want to.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you guys, if we have more than 10 speakers, that's when all this connection stuff really gets bad. So I just wanted to mention that thing.
Yeah. Well, I just want, I thoroughly enjoy Sandy's show. We loyally watch now Tuesday and Friday. Sometimes I watch her left past 10 on Wednesdays with the funny guy, the letter hack, the comedian, the comic book writer. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, Sandy, as always, and she's talked. We continue on. Politicians. I've been discussing politics all week with Dr. Mike and Sandra. We can always discuss politicians and democracy some more. We can always discuss 364 highway. I can see why the neoliberal capitalists are so eager to build highways right across the Amazon. When I look at the map, I can picture, turn the whole thing into Manhattan, put the gridlock of roads, right across the whole damn place, start building homesteads, restaurants, hotels, boutiques, make some money. It is prime territory. It's empty. It's beautiful land. I can see how they get that gold rush.
A subject of cops. I know everyone is cringing about this subject. I wrote an article, I think it was back in April, about the Belém. Belém will be hosting COP13 next year in the state of Pará. And I wrote an article called Belaying Spotlight on COP30 Host City, highlighting all the issues very, very significant for the state, for the governor of Pará. His name is Helder Barbalho. And as a matter of fact, when I wrote this article and I asked for his for an interview with him, he he denied, but they gave me some statements. And once they read the article, he actually they sent me a message asking me to delete some of the paragraphs of my article, which I refused to, and because everything was based on the truth. So basically, the COP30 will happen, and Lula and Helder Barbalho are very keen for this to happen, and they're both pushing very hard for initiatives like carbon credits. Okay, this is gets very interesting because the MPF, which is the Federal Prosecutor's Office, has asked the court make and you think, why is that? Right? Because all the indigenous people and traditional communities in the region were not consulted, okay, and they were violating basically the ILO Convention 1669, and this is happening. All wrongdoing is happening in the region, and COP30 will be pushing for all these projects. A bioeconomy, okay? So the bioeconomy, what is it? Part of it includes growing biofuels and crops like sugar cane, soy, corn, palm oil, and all these industries will be expanding, and therefore more infrastructure projects will be needed, like roads, ports, railways, to transport all these goods. So all of this will come at a very, very high cost, both socially and economically. So, environmentally. So these are the issues of some of the issues of COP30. Beginning of next year, maybe March time, February. Highlighting all the pending issues in the region, and all these COPs are just cop outs basically. This is from me about COPs.
Are you, I have two thoughts, Monica. One is if you wrote a book, that would be really cool. Some kind.
What is that?
Writing a book? Have you ever thought of writing a book?
Oh no, gosh, I'm not capable enough to do that.
The other question for you is, are you tempted to go to the COP30 next year?
Bragging about it, but the majority of my work, I earn almost nothing. Okay, I earn £100 per piece that I write, which is not much, and the rest they don't pay me, and it's an expensive business, and then all the time I dedicate to doing all this research and writing is not easy. And I'm only allowed to talk so much about it and openly because I'm not attached to any mainstream media. They are not telling me what to do, what to write, who to talk to. So, I mean, this is the beauty of it, and I do it with pleasure. So I would consider to go to COP30, but just to investigate the truth about it. What's really.
The Climate Crisis Club. This is 104. That's 52 times 2. Oliver and I have been at this for 2 years, and 7 days a week. I don't take much time off, and I haven't made 1 cent yet. Well, we have David with us in sunny California, and I enjoy talking to David. So many of you I enjoy talking to, actually. That's part of the pleasure and the fun of all this. You know, someone like David, I've never fought with David. Started getting into the, oh no, you're wrong. You know, like.
Yeah, don't worry.
Well, there's certain.
Give me time. My puns are pretty bad. Trouble is, you agree with me, they're bad. So.
Right. What is that?
Hey, good morning and good day, everybody.
Yeah.
I do have something to share this morning, though, and it's non-trivial from the perspective of my team. Or really, it's amazing, these people I get to work with are living in a don't look up situation right now, where at least half the population is ignoring obvious signs, when ground is melting out from under you, and there's more moisture in hurricanes, which means when the winds blow faster, they have more mass in them and they hit harder. So we're in a situation where it really easy to get into doom and gloom, and of course I'm the eternal optimist, as you know, Alex. And when Greg Binford told me 3.5 years ago that he actually had a solution that would have a significant impact on reducing CO2 globally, that could potentially move things back to, and which is, he said privately, and I say don't say publicly because people are not ready. The crop system, which I'm going to talk about again, is very simple. We have 10 billion tons of crop residue every year because the lungs of the earth inhale that much carbon through agriculture, and then we promptly burn it or turn it into ethanol, or put it in the ground, where within a year or two it converts back to CO2 and goes back. So in other words, nature is giving us and do the crops method globally, we could actually be in a situation where we're pulling a reasonable percentage of that 10 gigatons, because you do need to leave some of the carbon in the soil for plant growth. But right now, at least a third of it, or let's say 30%, is disposed of in some way that causes it to go back into the atmosphere. So if we were to store crop residue in the deep ocean, it's going to sit there comfortably for hundreds to thousands of years. It's the natural carbon cycle, which is the carbon follows gravity, which means it goes from the soil to the rivers, the air side of the carbon cycle really fast. The whole concept with crops is to reverse that by taking some of the crop residue, a safe amount based upon what individual farmers think, not some government agency. You put it in the deep ocean, and you've now taken the carbon out. So it's a really and Binford was in 2001. Then Strand and Binford did a detailed analysis of costs and feasibility in 2009, and that was published, and they applied to the Department of Energy for grants and things, which of course went nowhere. And during the last 3.5 years, our team has traveled all over the world. We've talked with people at all levels. We're getting more and more support. And big surprise for everyone in this group, governments have done virtually nothing. And I mean, we've worked hundreds of hours with the EPA, which has not granted any permits for us, but has granted permits for hundreds of wells to pump CO2 in. And we all know that wells blow out periodically. A month and a half ago, one did it in Arizona, but you never hear that in the media for some amazing reason. And, I was able almost 2 years ago. And surprisingly, in the last year, they've heard this concept called biomass sinking in some of their literature. But the bottom line is you're trying to educate the institutions and the governments. And one of our associates to change direction, but we've tried. And we've tried to get attention with a lot of corporations. I mean, one of the people I know is considered the father of the modern data center. So we've been to data centers, which means, Meta and LinkedIn and Microsoft and all these. And unfortunately, they have a pretty close click. I mean, we can't even get a response. And the carbon credit system is so messed up. And people are confused between carbon credits and carbon removal. And what we're talking about is real physical removal of the carbon, but by using the common sense approach that plants absorb the carbon naturally. Do we try? Since we've what's beautiful about the process of taking crop residue and putting it into the deep ocean is it has minimal, not zero, but minimal impact down there. And there's been lots of studies that show that. We've done extensive design of monitoring systems, deep ocean monitoring systems and long-term monitoring. The devil's in the details, but the simple fact of the matter is sunlight gives us photosynthesis, which gives us the capture. Gravity moves things and it naturally breaks down into sediment over thousands of years. And it does have some small nutritional benefit for the small amounts of benthic life down there, for which we're learning more and more all the time. And one of our team members is a graduate student at Scripps, and it's being very interestingly received there because we've talked with benthic scientists about the impact, because it has to be monitored and managed carefully, because we've messed up things all over the planet here. We don't want to mess up the bottom of the ocean too. And we also know it's very dynamic. Most of the corporations have everything all locked up. I don't want to get into politics or discussing COP because I have a lot of questions about that as to whether it's really doing anything. This year, it's particularly like farmers, island nations, individual sustainable crop farmers, things like that. People who care about the environment but want to act individually. So we realized that one of the best ways to do that would be to have an app that allows you to learn about what we're doing and some of the environmental information that for some reason the media just never seems to notice. And then allow people to quickly evaluate generally what their usage is, but in a fun and more gamified way. It's not like filling out an IRS form or the long EPA evaluation of your impact. We can do it with 4 simple questions and be within 20% of what your probable impact is. And then allow the concept of not purchasing carbon removal at the, gigaton level or 1,000-ton level or whatever, or even the ton level, but allow people, if they choose, without harassing them, without making them feel guilty, allow them to make micro purchases so that together, if on a democratic basis, enough people find there's support for this, then we can show the world there is a way to do it and that there is support for it. So I'm unofficially announcing to this group today the availability of version 1.0 of our app. It's in the Google Play Store. You'd search for Crops Carbon, and you can download it on an Android phone and take a look at it and get feedback. We'll start more generally announcing it over the next weekend. But I wanted you all to look at it first, because one of the things I love about this whole group is that there's this huge diversity of opinions, just like within our team. There's this huge range of, experience and caring and concern and hope. And I think this would be ideal to invite everyone here in the Climate Crisis Club to take a look at the app. If you happen to have an Apple phone, there's a workaround for it. You can go to our website, go all through the big long page, which talks about what we're doing and shows our team and everything. And at the very end, there's a little learn more button. If you click that, it takes you to a duplicate of what's in the app. So you can get to this from Safari on an Apple phone. You can get to it from a desktop, but you can also download the app, because we know that if people have stuff on their smartphone, they're more likely to look at it. And this way we're bypassing the mainstream media, which ignores us, but does endless articles on Climeworks. We're only about 50 times more efficient than, these direct air capture machines. So I'm very excited to basically announce this and to invite the group to give us real feedback, because we're not in this for short-term money. We want to use capitalism in a gamified way to get people to do things and to test the market for the concept of real carbon removal that really works, and reward people for it in a way that's fun and not guilt driven, because every one of us is probably putting more into the air than we're taking out. I mean, I have 5 children. I know we have a carbon impact. We do what we can. We recycle. We're common sense. When we do fly, we fly economy. Our goal is eventually to remove enough carbon to neutralize our impact. But right now, that's too expensive. But we can do things a little bit, and then more, and then more. And the big thing is to wean in the long term the planet off of fossil fuel. If you did it suddenly, billions of people would starve. Website is the beauty of crops is it's a moral solution. It's one that doesn't do enough that it would allow fossil fuel burning to continue, but it does have the ability to mitigate some of the effects while we transition, and then in the long term wind things back, where we gradually pull a little more carbon out each year. So maybe we get it back 60 years ago the way it was when I was a kid, and then maybe 100 years ago. We have the potential, and I am the eternal optimist, and while I'm a total space geek and punster and science fiction fan, sometimes the best solutions are the simplest and the natural ones. Pardon me. And this works with indigenous groups. This works with sustainable farmers. It can work with large farming groups. It can work on a nation level. And if we'd ever get these wars wrapped up and all this horrible, situations going on in the world, it could focus more. And right now, people are just, totally, I think, stressed out and overloaded. And I'd like to think that we're a ray of hope in this. And I sincerely sincerely ask every one of you to check out the website and the app. You can Google Play. It's just, you can search for Crops Carbon, and the website is pretty simple. It's crops-xprize.com, the minus sign, and I'll put that in the climate thing. So that's my spiel, Alex. Thanks for letting me talk, and all of you, thank you for listening. I really care, and I really would like to get feedback.
Sure.
David,
Yeah,
would
go
you
ahead.
be
Mike.
able to share? Sorry, would you be able to share the studies that your corporation has conducted? Would that be okay?
You can share everything we've got out publicly, and the original papers by Binford and Strand are all over the place. We have, we're on X, so there's a Crops X Prize, where we've just posted things for 3.5 years now. So we're extreme transparency is essential for success. Anything we got, we show. And that's the biggest challenge is that some, what I would call second-rate companies are using some of our ideas and raising money on it and not doing what we think would be good. So we need to make it clear that there can be misapplications of anything, and the devil's in the details, because we do it with a carbon efficiency greater than 92%, and as electrified transportation takes over, we can hit 97% carbon efficiency. It's just fantastic the way that this can go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And a lot's on our website.
Yeah, there were a couple of requests for the links to the app in the purple pill down there. I'm doing
What's the name of the app?
it.
Is it
You can just do
CropX?
Crops Carbon, 2 words.
Crops-
Crops like they grow.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Crops
And we're in the Play
Carbon.
Store.
Yeah, I downloaded there on this Chromebook here, Crops Carbon Recycling, but there are several requests for the link in the purple pill. Because I'm busy chatting with Going South on YouTube, I haven't gotten around to it. I don't know where Going South has gone.
I'm working on it.
Good.
I'll put everything up in the Climate Crisis Club thing and take care of that. I'll have to drop off soon, because now that the app is ready, I'm going to be sharing it with several groups and things like that. And I have meetings within our team today, so I won't be able to stay on as long today, but I'd like to stay a few more minutes. Every time I tune in to this group, it's just amazing. And I'm so glad I found you all about a month and a half ago, because this is finally a balanced approach where it's not all doom and gloom, or it's not, impossible solutions. It's like, what are the real problems? What are some possibilities for survival of the species and all the species on this planet? Because David Castleman, his attitude is, people are animals too, but he really cares about saving animals. And, the EcoFlix, television site is just amazing. All the stuff he's done to support animals everywhere. He's personally helped fly elephants around to get them into safe places and stuff like that. It's just incredible.
Yeah. What are the real problems? If we could clearly define that, what are the real problems? I'm very confident we could come up with answers. One of my favorite ways of solving problems is simply handing them off to somebody else. Like Oliver. We know Oliver extremely well. He's a very bright, kind man. So Oliver, you solve all these environmental problems, and I think you'll watch college football and goof around with Going South all day.
No, well, I quite like doing that as well. But I wanted to ask David, now is the moment. I really want to define the difference, for him to define the difference between seaweed carbon capture and crops carbon capture, because seaweed seems to be where everybody is most of the sort of the money, as it were, is looking at seaweed, and they are, to my understanding, finding there are issues with the seaweed that they actually can't get it to stop growing very often. So with crops, I'm not sure at all what happens to crops all the way down there, whether they behave themselves and just quietly decompose like a whale at the end of its life, if you like, or if they behave in a naughty way as well. Can you clear that up for me?
Absolutely, yes. And then this is where I should just disconnect and say absolutely yes, and then no further. Okay. One of the things that I will try to do in the weeks and months to come is have various members of our team, because we have, Robert's our ocean chemist, and Stuart is the soil scientist, is get the best people on here to answer the questions the best possible. But here is my take on it as a, entrepreneur slash inventor slash scientist slash a little bit of everything, specialist in generalizations, expert on nothing. So the issue is, when you put crop residue down, it's stored as solid carbon in the cellulosic fiber of the plant material, and each different crop has different ratios of how much is carbon and how much is not. And we've done studies. I mean, we know for different crops in different regions and storing it in different places, we know all the carbon efficiency costs, all the dollar or ruble or whatever costs, or euro or rupee, whatever. And the idea is that when you're dealing with living things like, let's take kelp, seaweed, things like that, those can only grow in the first 30 meters of depth, because without sunlight, they do not grow. And so therefore, we've talked with a lot of teams and things that are figuring out how to upwell nutrients from lower levels and bring it up and grow it and then shut off the light. We've had some Amal has a very clever approach on running lights off of ships to grow kelp and algae, and then turn off the lights and have it fall down. The problem is there's no MRV, no monitoring, verifying, or reporting. In other words, you don't know how much you're doing and how well it's working, or whether it sinks, or whether it floats, or whether it gets eaten by other animals, and then so on and so forth. So in many cases, you have problems of validity and verification, or understanding the impact. That's why things like ocean seeding with iron and things like that, you could have all kinds of, unknown long-term effects if done at scale. Now, in the case of crop residue, the first bale was put down in 2009 by MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, working with some of the scientists at Crops. And it was sampled in 2014. That's 9 years later or something. No, I can't even subtract or add anymore. That would have been 10 years later. And then I think they're going to go back again in 2025. And we've done similar up and down research with the Southern California Marine Institute and work in the Gulf of Mexico, where we sequestered 2.36 tons of carbon in 2021. And the bottom line is this, is when you put cellulosic fiber down there, it is in a very high pressure, low light, low oxygen area. And we've seen crabs run across it for a while at, 2,000 meters down, and maybe they get some nutrients off, then they go on their way. And the bales just don't decompose. They will gradually turn into ocean sediment over thousands of years. The other thing that's covered in our app is the simple fact that when you get below the thermocline, the ocean is in layers. It's three-dimensional. And when you get down, more than 1,000 meters, if that bale of sugarcane crop or rice or whatever cellulosic fiber you have down there instantly decomposed into CO2, just poof, like by magic, or some magic bacteria ate it, what would happen is, because of the layering and ocean currents and such, it would be a minimum of 400 years and typically 800 years or more before it made it to the surface of the ocean and came out again. So even if we put it down there and it instantly decomposed 100%, we've got at least 400 years of sequestration, which gives civilization literally centuries to get off of fossil fuel from that perspective. Now, in no way am I suggesting we slow down the transition, but what I'm saying is that so many of these carbon sequestration approaches, like pumping CO2 into wells and hoping it will turn into stone. Well, if that, all the wells have leaks, and we've seen CO2 line leaks in towns where the paramedics rushing to help people, their engines stalled. And we came very close to a lot of people losing lives with all these CO2 wells they're doing. So the simple fact of the matter is this is extremely safe, the crops approach. It's extremely benign, and it really is permanent. And these other approaches are often not practical. And when you talk about things in the first 30 meters of the ocean, there's only so much sandy beach to grow seaweed that you would then harvest and then sequester, which means drop into the deep ocean. There's only so much space, whereas 70% of the planet is deep ocean. And modern agriculture makes it very easy to collect crop residue because you use the same machines that you harvest the crop with. So you don't need new infrastructure. You don't need new transportation. You don't need new things. You just create some more jobs. You create, most of the money that goes into the cost of the crops process goes back to the farmers. So now they have two yields, a yield of food and a yield of carbon. That's why the company name is Crops Carbon Harvest, because this means that indigenous and sustainable farmers now get two paychecks. They get paid for the residue instead of it, going away. That's why carbon credits are all over the map in terms of quality and methodology. But this is true carbon removal, where it's really being taken out of the air by plants. It's transported, monitored, and verified using the CROPS method and put in the deep ocean, which is where it would end up naturally. So these other approaches, right now we're in a climate crisis, and a lot of people don't recognize it or deny it. And I have 5 children that are growing up right now. I would like them to live in a world similar or better than the one we're in now and the one I grew up in. So I see the approach of taking something that's literally given to us by the billions of tons every year and putting it using transportation. By the way, this is not Amazon next day arrival. This means you can use ships that sail with ocean currents, sail with solar power, sail with wind. And one of our strategic partners is Curtin Maritime. This guy started as a tugboat captain out of Catalina, now has one of the largest specialty marine service things. They build ships that are hydrogen. They build ships. They built the drone ships for SpaceX. They build dredging ships. They're all over the country. Really caring group of people, really smart. They've moved ships from Singapore to Diego Garcia. I mean, you name it, they can do it. I mean, his attitude is that when we have large orders, he says, you give us an order to sequester, we'll put it anywhere. We'll get it down and do it. And that's the kind of spirit we have. And the other team member, that's right on our team that is shown, the costs and the methodology and train travel of goods, which is commonly used in agriculture, is very efficient travel. I mean, it's measured in pennies per ton per mile and things like that. In other words, it works. It works at scale, and the more we do it, the better it gets. These other approaches that involve growing things and harvesting them, in the top area of the ocean, so many of them have issues of how does it work? Is it scalable? Is it done at scale? Well, agriculture is done at scale, and it works with small farmers. It will work on Pacific Islands. It'll work, in the Philippines. It'll work in Southeast Asia. It'll work off of Brazil. In other words, basically, wherever there's agriculture and food shipments, there's the ability to also take that second harvest of carbon and put it in the deep ocean. And that's why we've been working all over the world on this. And, basically it's been a labor of love for all of us for 3.5 years. And I'm very excited about where we can go. And the more questions you have, I mean, we have had so many questions, how does it affect the soil? How does it affect the deep ocean? How can you do it affordably? All of those things have been covered in many, many ways. And we keep finding nuances. That's why you know, and Terry, she's amazing. She's a former dean of college, and she's, you know, she does our outreach and tries to educate the educators and, you know, discuss, you know, with scientists this. So we just have an amazing group to answer questions, often less long-windedly than I do.
Can I ask you, David? I've got just 3 observations. One, the first one is you defined the difference. In my head, it's just an observation. Seaweed is of the sea. It wants to grow, but crops are not of the sea, and they maybe just don't want to grow in the deep ocean. I mean, that's just a very loose way of looking at it. The other thing is
clever.
Yeah, it
Clever.
just struck me that there's that straight definition. It's purely mythical, might mean nothing. But the other thing is, how can you proceed when there are other people trying to rip you off and doing it badly? This is the bit that if you have some other companies or other outfits that are taking your ideas and not implementing them to your quality control basis, as it were, then I would imagine they're going to come unstuck, and they're going to give the whole business a bad reputation from the start. How can you avoid that?
Very good question.
And the last one is as a follow-on to that, the amount of pollution that you will be saving is obviously phenomenal. If you can stop Asian countries, Pakistan, India, etc., and further away, Indonesia as well, from burning their residue, you're saving thousands, possibly millions of lives.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so let's take the first one. How do you do it right? Well, number one is you get the word out. And we've been trying to do that with traditional media and traditional governments and traditional groups. That hasn't worked. So therefore, in view of the fact that there's like a huge schism between those who want and care about the environment and those who either feel hopeless or denial, the first way to get it out is through social media, because we know that can reach 1 billion people or more in time. In other words, not everything's going to go viral instantly, but you get the word out and someone tells someone, and every time I meet someone, I talk to some about this. Well, the app is our first way of really leveraging widespread knowledge of this, because that gives us something where it's codified. It's not a long YouTube video. It's not this and that. So this group right here can look at the app. If they like it, they can tell others about it. In other words, you can get the multiplication factor of the 6 degrees of freedom. So the way we get it out is first to show how it should be done right. Now, the second thing is that as we can get orders for carbon sequestration and start doing it, then it begins to become, well, of course, this is the way you do it. And because we have been transparent and have the white papers on how to do the monitoring and verification reporting right, that means that others will gradually codify it, because as carbon taxes occur or payment for carbon removals, then companies will tend to demand that it meets certain like ISO standards. And what we hope to do is help guide towards standards on this. Just like you have standards for voltages and standards for construction, there'll be a standard for the monitoring, because our goal is not to be the one doing this. Our goal is to show the way. Our goal is to help save the world. We expect that we would have healthy licensing of the concepts, healthy just use of the concepts, because we know there's certain things that we've developed that aid the deep water monitoring, because we know that underwater UAVs are going to come down on cost. We figured out electronic ways to tag things so that a person can't claim they put down 1,000 tons when they only put down 10. You know, the money laundering and obfuscation effects. We have ways of showing that if we did 10,000 tons, there really is 10,000 tons deeply stored there. So in other words, we can, if we need to have profit motive down in the future, it can be by licensing some of these technologies and some of these means. But in the meantime, we show that what has to happen is there has to be accountability. Where did the crop residue come from? How was it tested? How was it deployed? Where was it stored in the ocean? And how
What happened there?
I think we lost him.
Okay,
one
he's just
particular
not just-
storage site and
He's
such.
back. He's good.
Yeah, just a glitch. So the bottom line is that the best thing we can do, because the paper was first published in 2001. Another one with detailed costing back then was published in 2009. We have been transparent, showing all the different things we're doing, to the point where another company borrowed one of our scientists' idea and raised, I think, $5 million on it. And I have questions about their methodology, but I'm not throwing negatives. Let's just say that we're trying to do it right, even if it takes longer, but we'd prefer to move faster for the sake of the planet. So the answer is, the way you prevent misapplications is to get the word out on how to do it right. Then, if someone is deciding to purchase carbon removal, whether it's required by a government or philanthropic reasons, whatever, they can say, does it conform to these standards? Does it do this? So we force quality by exposure of knowledge on how to do it right. And I think that's the key. And then the second part of your question, what was the second part again? Just because I'm in my car, so I didn't take notes. What was the second point you made?
I made three, and I remember one of them was the burning, obviously.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that's huge.
Yeah.
And that was not really a question. That was a statement.
Observation.
And yeah, and I absolutely agree. But then you had two parts to the question. One is, how do we prevent, misapplication?
Seaweed versus crop residue being ocean deep buried, seaweed being of the ocean, and crop being of the land. Maybe that's why it could succeed better. That was the other. I think you've answered that.
Yeah, I think so.
certainly
And the interesting thing about all of these approaches to farm things on the ocean, they all can work. The question is, are they scalable? Because there's so many unknowns. We know agriculture works, or people would be, we'd all be hunting for food right now instead of here. So we know agriculture works. It has its flaws and things, but the idea is that there's two crops. There's the food and the residue. And the residue has carbon, and this is a gift, and we should treat that as a gift and store it where it eventually would end up in 1 million years. Since we've rushed to take it out of the ground in the form of oil, we need to rush to put it back in the deep ocean, so we can replenish the reservoirs.
But it's also the
out.
idea that that I find the idea of cowboy outfits out there trying to rip you off. I mean, that's all I would feel horrible. What I would add to that is I have the impression that type of person has been lured away by the seaweed, and they've gone after the seaweed, because the seaweed, as you know, has got a huge following, and it's got questions around it now, from this growth from microbes and growth from just itself as well in the deep ocean. They're scratching their heads about that a bit, and a lot of science is up against them as well. So in a way, you played a bit of a blinder by being away on your own with the crop residue, which I think is rather splendid, actually. And this is one. This is this is one to follow very, very closely.
Well, let me tell you something. I don't think I'm violating any ethics here, because it wasn't told to me in confidence. But I know of one person who I talked with about getting some funding for what we're doing. And I won't name names or associations, but what he told me, and he's a really good guy, is that he had just put together a group to invest in basically growing and harvesting along the shorelines, things like seaweed and such, where it would then be, harvested and measured and baled and then sequestered out in the South Pacific and areas like that. And I haven't heard anything further. I haven't talked with him in a couple of years. So that was absolutely a case of that kind of thing. But you see, my philosophy personally, because we got into this because, I've known Peter Diamandis as an acquaintance since before he started the X Prize Foundation. When I heard he was going to do this announcement with Elon Musk, the $100 million prize.
Of course.
And I call up Greg and I say, Greg, you want to watch the video on this? And Greg says, I already have the solution. And an hour later, and about 40 email attachments later, I read it all. And before even the video came out with Elon Musk on the prize and that, Greg and my wife and I had decided we were going to do this. I mean, it was time, and we would try to compete for the prize, which we didn't win because they were looking for fancy machines. They had judges for land, sea, rock, and air, and we're hybrid because we use the air to the plants to the sea, you know what I'm trying to say. So we didn't win any prizes. We were a registered team. I mean, we were one of the top 250th out of 1,100 or something. But what my point is that I do believe right now, this is like seeing when spaghetti's done. We need to throw everything we got against the wall and see what sticks and what falls. I mean, right now, if you really look at the CO2 levels, which is the big thing for me, is because I can prove that. See, I've even gotten climate deniers and staunch Republican attorneys to agree that if it's affordable, we probably should bend the curve and not keep shooting the CO2 levels up real high, because that tends to favor non-mammalian life forms, if any. And you begin to get to the point where only crystals and viruses survive, So the key thing is that we need to try all these things. And the one thing is that I want to make sure that crops doesn't get lost in the noise, because for 23 years now, this solution's been on the table. And I feel like we're researching while the world burns, just like Nero fiddled while Rome burned.
Absolutely.
And this is why I am absolutely appealing to this group. Take the 15 or 20 minutes and look at the app, look at the website, give us some feedback, but by all means, if you think it's at all possibly viable, would you share it with others? Because the one way a good idea will not happen is if no one knows about it and no one does anything. And I need to get this out there for people to think about and decide. I'm not going to sell snake oil. I believe in this with all my heart, that Greg is right, and Stuart Strand is right, and Bob Messer is right, that crop residue should go in the deep ocean as a way to rebalance things. Now, is it the only solution? Of course not. I mean, we can build Climeworks machines till we run out of electricity, because to build enough Climeworks machines, we would need 192% of all the available electricity on the planet.
No.
I want you to think about that. So, the solution is not indirect air capture machines at their current level. Now,
but also,
done?
David,
Sure.
your transport system sounds very sound as well. You've got, it's very low emitting transport. If you've got trains to transport it, freight trains, obviously, and you've got ships and tugs and so on under sail to take the crop out into the ocean, at their own pace, as it were, then you are capturing a shit ton, I think it was a fuck ton, as Pup would say, of carbon again by having sympathetic transport systems as well.
Right.
So that's perfect, isn't it? I mean, you did mention that as
well.
Civilization
moved all over the world for 10, 20, 30,000 years by wind power alone. Sailing ships, we called them. Yep, with sails. No, it all works. Now, here's what's fun about what you're talking about, though, is that because this works small or large scale, could now actually take their crop residue and sequester it. And they don't have the United States EPA to slow them down and work in favor of the oil companies. They could choose as small indigenous groups to do this and use our monitoring system that we've designed, which is pretty straightforward, to be able to prove to people that they've done it and ask for, at COP30, reimbursement for carbon removed. So they now could contribute to correcting the problem made by the major polluting nations and demand payment for value received. as opposed to for damages. In other words, they could actually show and shame the world. And he'd like to keep his empire together with all these territories out there, offer to buy carbon removal from these nations, these small independent islands with agriculture and ocean.
Interrupt you.
No, Alex, thank you so much for granting the floor for this length of time. Thank you all for listening on this one.
Absolutely, man. I don't know if Monica wanted to add something there.
I just wanted to ask, how, it's just a basic question. How is this project funded? It's just curiosity. Sorry.
All volunteer work so far and some philanthropy donations from the scientists who believe in it. And with the app, we're hoping to get tiny amounts of funds over the long term to do more trial, 1,000-ton sequestrations until finally somebody says, well, let's do 1 billion tons after doing 1 million. This thing scales beautifully, but the benefits start at about 1,000 tons. And that's what the app explains, is that we want to accumulate enough funds to do the first 1,000, because we've gotten orders for, $100,000 worth, and we're getting ready to do a sequestration, either in the Black Sea or the Gulf of Mexico, depending on where we get the permit first, because this is global. So a lot of that we'll probably have to have another discussion about all these details. But the bottom line is that the funding is a challenge, because all of these environmental groups and so many of these celebrities, they're just playing image games.
Yeah.
They're just not doing anything that really matters.
I can see, David, you answered the question beautifully.
Thank you.
And then Andrea.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Blood, sweat, and tears, man. No worries. Andrea, our great friend from Singapore, she interviewed Robert this week. I can't read her mind. Andrea, how are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just wanted to say hi. It's just after 2 o'clock in the morning, and David, I appreciate your passion. And I've been having a bit of a spat on Twitter with some denier, and want to thank Judas and Robert for jumping in. I'm not a big blocker, and I'm not a big. I don't know those guys that can do the what do they call themselves? The guys that are fighting against the deniers all the time.
Climate ninjas, climate brawlers,
Ninjas.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah. The brawlers, right?
Brawlers
I'm
and
not a
ninjas.
brawler, but yeah, this guy's like, he's like, basically all anyone who's moving in the climate space is just there to make money. And I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, sure. And he's like, well, convince me otherwise. I'm like, oh, fuck off. like seriously, fuck off.
Yeah,
I don't know when.
Put hashtag climate brawl and just leave it alone. The rest of them.
I should have done that. But just that whole, I've spent decades understanding this issue. I'm not going to convince you with the tweet, so I'm not going to waste my time, sort of thing. But anyway, so it was great having Robert. He's not. I can't see him at the moment. I had no idea how it would go with David and Richard, because they're a little bit conservative. They're hedge fund guys, money men. But he was brilliant, and his hair was. I mean, trust me, for the first 20 minutes, I didn't think he was going to show up. But yeah, I just wanted to say hi to everyone. It's like I said, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to have to jump off soon. But I wanted to ask Monica a question because I've seen a lot of the stuff that you're sharing around Lula.
Go ahead.
So here's one of the things that concerns
Yes.
me, right? He's certainly not perfect, and I pay attention to what you share. But he's got to be better than Bolsonaro, right?
I'm reluctant to answer this question, but
Right.
but
Oh shit,
but
that's
I
bad.
think no.
That is
I'm
bad.
gonna say something that's something that I've been discussing with the scientists I work with. Okay, the Bolsonaro administration was dumb because literally he was surrounded by non-technical people. Okay, so he was surrounded by military, sergeants or whatever you call them. Okay, it was a dumb administration. So whatever happened, for instance, all the dismantling of the laws, all you had to do is go to the MPF and just and fight back. So they were quite dumb. The Lula administration. For you to have an understanding, I met Lula in the 90s when I worked for the Brazilian embassy in London, and from that time he managed to convince the entire group of diplomats to side with him. So this is how convincing and manipulative he can be. So his administration is incredibly capable and very clever. So he's surrounded by a lot of capable people. So this is the difference between them both. So so to answer your question, they're just as bad, when it comes to what's good for the country, what's good for the people. You have 33 million Brazilians living under food insecurity, and Brazil is one of the largest food producers in the world. And they are just talking about tackling poverty and hunger. It's just to be honest with you, I don't trust either of those. And Brazil has gone through phases one after another of instability, where the power concentration stays where it is. It doesn't change, and it's all a very, very good PR machine. All the media, if you type, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, they're saying deforestation fell by 30%. So it was on every single newspaper across the globe. Okay, his PR machine is very, very clever. Okay, it's very, so he's surrounded, he's managed to manipulate the entire system. So I'm more scared about his government than the previous one. So I don't know. I hope I have answered your question.
No. It's interesting because I suppose for the rest of us, we kind of want to believe that it's got to be better because it was so ridiculous last time. And then when you're saying Bolsonaro was surrounded by idiots, I mean, we're looking at that in the US right now. We're looking at the cabinet picks that are coming up. So here's a question for everyone. So part of the conversation that we were having on Climate Courage the other day was, is fascism inevitable? And when I say that, people don't like it. But when you sort of sit there and you look at what's going on around the world, democracy is failing at an incredible rate. Like it's falling off the cliff, right? And when you understand like what's going on from a climate perspective, biodiversity loss, and all the implications, and you follow the thread all the way through to the end, like there is, so our elections anywhere in the world, and we're seeing in the UK, Starmer, people are already calling for elections in the UK, and it's like I give the guy a chance, right? But is fascism inevitable? Because the reality is none of the politicians can promise a better life. They cannot promise a better future for the children. They can't if they continue the way they're going, right? And none of the politicians have got the balls to stand up. and say this is the future that we're going towards. And if we don't do this, we're borrowing from our children's future, right? Which is part of the conversation. And every time I talk to people about this, they will sit there and they'll tell me the reason that's not the case. But actually, when it comes down to the end of the line, unless our politicians can stand up and say, this is where we are, this is the risk that we're facing, this is what we need to do, all of us, we need to, really dramatically draw down, what we're taking from the earth to be able to move forward. But the reality is the majority of people, without understanding that they're actually doing it, showing me that fascism is inevitable unless we start to speak up. So one of the things I talked about, and I did it in the last Weekend Reads, is so MSNBC looks like it might be sold, maybe to Fox News, which means that basically the left-leaning media in the US is decimated. And the right media, as well as the influence in the right, is just expanding. And it's got so much money being thrown at it, but there's no money going towards the left, right? So unless we can get the voice of the left bigger, funded, like I don't do anything I do. No one's paying me. Like David was saying, it's all, we're all scrapping here, trying to make stuff work. When no one's paying us to do what we're doing, right? But at the end of the day, we've all got to eat. We've all got to pay the rent or pay the mortgage or do all that sort of stuff. So I think one of the biggest things that we've really got to focus on is not just the climate voice, but the left voice. Really, sort of, we need to raise it. We need to fund it. We need to support it. But the majority of people that I know that sit where I would consider in the left, they're all just gone. They're gone. They've gone off social media. They're not part of it anymore. It's too depressing. It's too ugly. And so we've got this angry, nasty voice dominating the global discourse, and we're absconding our responsibility. So that's probably one of the topics that I'm really interested in at the moment. Like the vast majority of people who voted for Trump don't pay attention to political news. The vast majority that voted for Harris do pay attention to political news. 70% of Americans don't trust the mainstream media, but they trust Joe Rogan. They trust Joe information sphere, and we all need to, if we can. Not everyone wants to do it. It's not comfortable to be out there. I think Sandra was here. She's still here. She's putting her voice out there. We've got to put our voice out there.
And I agree with you 100%. And I was just going to ask you, do we have, and this is not for us, but it's for, my audience. Do we have a stash of like really scary, but not too scary, but truthful, like memes, like climate memes? Is that like out
That's a
somewhere?
good idea. We should talk about.
Okay.
That's a good idea. Is sticking it on the website. That's an excellent idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I can make memes. I just don't know. I don't know all the. I mean, I'm not writing everything down, but you know what I'm saying. This is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Ideas,
thanks.
good ideas. And then Andrea, one quick thing. You mentioned Joe Rogan, who I hardly knew anything about. He did talk about our pal, Dr. John Hoops, this week, right? They had the 2 Graham Hancock supporters on the last podcast with Joe Rogan. And I was talking to Dr. Hoops quite a bit, looking into it. He was actually physically scared. It is the #1 podcast in the English-speaking world, right? Australia, US, UK, Canada, everywhere. And looking at Joe Rogan, he is from my area, right? He's from New England here, outside of Boston. And he was a TV actor. What Joe Rogan does so well is target the 100 IQ people, dead center. Those that are a little below 100, they think Joe Rogan's smart. Those that are a little above 100 think Joe Rogan is entertaining. He's beautifully targeted the mass of people. Dr. Hoops' IQ is sky high. He's brilliant. He cares about indigenous people. He's an expert in pre-Columbian Costa Rican societies. He's a great guy, but he's way too smart. When he talks to the public, You know, he doesn't hit that 100 IQ thing. So when the 100 IQ people start voting and organizing, here we are. Those have been some of
Yeah.
my thoughts this week.
It's
But
an interesting it's an interesting insight, right? And you know, like I'm not looking at targeting the 100 IQ people.
I can't
but
do
like,
it, Andrea. I talked to Lakota Man. I talked to Jack Hopkins and Bag Company. They're so much better at it than I am. They're probably targeting 110, right? But I can't do it. I want to talk to you and all the interesting people here. I don't want to target the 100 IQ people.
but at the same time, so you know, I grew up in a working class family, so I've got two brothers who didn't they basically got, you know, to year 10. I don't know if that means anything in America. So
Oh.
you know, year 12 is your final year where you could
Okay.
graduate and go. Yeah. Fourth form. I don't know the equivalent. And my brothers are not dumb. And so when I speak, I'm speaking to them because I'm honoring their intelligence. But I'm not, you know, like even my books, right? I'm not going to speak down to you because you're dumb. Like I spent 20 years reading books like the, you know, motivational books, you know. Do you remember when Women Are from Mars, Men Are from Venus came out?
Yeah, sure. I
The
love
opposite.
people, Andrew. I don't care when I'm in person. I'll talk to anyone. It's this grand, large-scale messaging that Trump or Bolsonaro or any of them do so well. They get those people, 100 IQ people, really excited because most people don't want to vote. In most of these countries, you don't have to. They don't really want to. So you've got to get them excited. And it's if somebody's got an IQ 120 or 140. Let's talk some Nietzsche. Let's talk some Fellini films. But your 100 IQ crowd, you know, isn't into
Do we have
social stuff.
So I'm going to ask randomly again. Do we have any people in this group that know how to create the whole use the API and run the bots?
I'm
I'm
sure
just
Pup
asking.
does. He knows everything.
Oh yeah, Pup man.
And
Yeah,
Joel,
okay.
Joel's an IT guy, right?
Well, I think I'm not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
He's an IT guy, but you know, I feel awkward with Joel now. So
yeah. Well, Joel's my pal from Australia. He's real smart, good guy, and
well, yeah, it was nothing Joel did. So
nothing Joel
except
did. Andrea, let's get to a few hands and then we'll get
Yeah,
back to you if you're awake.
Jim's next.
Jim is next. And I think I'm tired of congratulating Jim for being such a great guy over week after week after week. He never messes up. He's like the A student around here, man.
Yeah. So is David still on?
I do not see David.
He's gone off now. He had to go off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep missing
But-
him and
But Jim, feel free to DM him with all your thoughts and so forth.
yeah. So you know, I keep missing him and Farmer Ed keeps missing him and this is the most obvious thing to me is that David and Farmer Ed or other regenerative agriculture people should be talking and that was my question for David. Is he talking to regenerative agriculture?
He is. Yes, he's going to be back to talk more about this, and he's put an app out as well, and he wants us to go through the app and to respond in kind directly on the app or in the space again here. So this is an ongoing. We are being like samplers of it, if you like, which I think is splendid. So this is not just done today, gone tomorrow. He'll be around talking about this for some time.
Yeah. And he likes to Zoom call with me. I've got to like sit here for hours talking to David.
So there's kind of a glaringly you know, obvious thing here that I'm not sure if everybody here has been kind of putting two and two together, but you know, Ed has been talking for months and months about no-till agriculture,
Yes.
and a you know, there are a couple of reasons for no-till agriculture. One is not disturbing the structure of the soil, and so that's half of it. The other half of it is that you also leave the crop residue to lie in place on the ground. You never take it away. You leave it there. And there's a number of reasons for that. The crop residue lying in place on the ground performs various agriculture services, one of which is preventing soil erosion, preventing the next dust bowl. And a second thing is it helps retain moisture in the soil, and for example, in Central America, in what they're calling the dry corridor, that you know, those regenerative agriculture practices of no-till and leaving the crop residue on the ground can spell the difference between losing your entire crop due to 3 weeks or 4 weeks of drought, or surviving through that you know, several weeks of drought. So the crop residue is a precious commodity, and you know, I think it's real important that we clarify that, you know, that this discussion between the regen ag people and the crops residue sequestration people are talking and are sorting this out. So
yeah, it's going to be a lively competition, isn't it? But it's also going to be a situation where there will always be tilling into the near future, not maybe the far future. So there will always be a need for this removal in the tilling of the crop residue. I mean, I can see where you're coming from too, and I bet a load of the crop residue goes straight back in the soil and gets captured that way as well.
yeah, well, in traditional tillage agriculture, you're taking the crop residue and tilling it under into the soil, and you know, returning a lot of carbon and nitrogen to the ground.
But what about when they burn it in Pakistan, India, Malaysia, so on?
Yeah, I'd agree that's a bad idea.
So there may be room for both in the short term, but in the longer
But
term.
that's a cost thing, right? It's a cost
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, completely.
So in India, it's much cheaper. Like what they're dealing with right now, it's cheaper for them to do that than it is to do something that makes all of their lives better.
My apologies for interrupting. I've got to go, and I wanted to say goodbye to everyone. Okay.
Monica, bye for now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Monica. As always, again, Brazil is super, super important, as is all of South America, and outside of your contributions, most of the rest of us are woefully ignorant of the South American continent.
We never know enough. We're always learning, and that's the beauty of it. Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend.
One final comment, and then I'll let the crop.
Go ahead, Jim, go ahead.
But I've communicated this with David, and he agrees that that probably what needs to be done for this whole thing to work is to settle upon the idea of removing a fraction for deep sea sequestration and leaving a fraction for the various agriculture services that I've talked about. But yeah, you know, my guesstimate was remove a third of it into the ocean and leave 2/3 where it lies. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim, as always. On and on we go. I would like to hear from Meme. Meme for Trees. Oh, is that James?
Yeah, it's
That's
me.
you.
Hope
Hey,
everybody's
how you
doing
doing?
well.
How's it been going? Hi.
Yeah, I'm still just hanging out on the internet, sharing memes, funding trees. I like you guys talk about, trying to do stuff. I've seen CropRex a number of times. I am also a regenerative farmer, very small scale, do it at home. Don't forget to compost, folks. Compost is a carbon dense soil amendment, helps your carbon. It's a little bit harder on all the DMRV stuff, but it works. It's natural. We all should do it. There's really not a whole lot of extra cost involved. But yeah, if you guys want to help me out, you guys said you want to make memes. Well, what you got to do is make those memes and then share them with me on my comments. Any comment on any post. And I lost my blue check mark because I changed my name, but I'm sure I'll get it back. And then part of my money goes to planting trees. I've already funded 1,630 trees with the power of meme. And we're going to do a lot more with your help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I will definitely send you memes.
Yeah, just drop me in my comments.
James, what was your CCC? I already forgot. You had a CCC going.
The Carbon Counting Club. We do regenerative agriculture, counting soil, carbon and soil amendments that we're putting in the earth. 1 liter of finished compost is about 1 pound CO2 equivalent. 1 liter of charcoal is about 1 pound of CO2, equivalent. And we measure it by volume, and we put it in the ground and grow pretty flowers and food and cool stuff.
Yeah, I always like the story of how you found us just by having the same initials. Why not? We try all different avenues, just like the forest and these ecologies. The ecologies out there try all different avenues.
Oh yeah, we need all hands on deck, getting what we can done. I know my largest concern with CropX is phosphorus distribution, but I'm not a super scientist, so I don't know if that's a real issue or if it's just something I worry about.
Right.
So
your approach is like an artist. I mean, an artist is a small scale operation, doing the experiments, trying things out, seeing what works, what doesn't work. That's what an artist does. And I keep looking at Lost Sue's picture, the Lakota medicine man, and why does that affect me so much personally? I don't know. But in the climate crisis, in the environmental poly crisis, there are many, 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 many topics and many, many, many solutions. And we need all people involved. The English people are not going to do it alone, or the Italians, or the Somalians, or the Brazilians, or the Thai. It's got to be all of us. We can't kick people out, and we can't reject ideas. I listen to David. I like David a lot as a person. I've talked to him quite a lot. And yet when I start hearing his capitalistic schemes, and I have a lot of questions for him myself. If you're going to grow all these crops and then transport them out into the ocean and then dump the crops under the ocean, that takes a lot of energy to get all that done. I have some questions for him. But regardless, I think
he was replying to those quite lucidly, which is that it's first of all, so the idea of multiple approaches to a problem and to a solution for different areas, for agriculture, for carbon capture, for healthy growing, and also to stop burning as well. Stop them bloody burning the stuff. If you pay them the farmers in India and so on, you actually pay them to take their crap away. It's really, it's a win-win, isn't it? People are going to be breathing easy. you're going to have your schools open. You're not going to be killing people the whole time. So I think he answered that. And with the transport, he definitely said it would be basically what you call it, freight training and wind transport at sea. So there is a certain kind of, I mean, if it works, it's in the mix again. It's part of the mix, surely. It's not necessarily a capitalist thing. I'm not going to go down that road because I always think that can really spoil things. But if it's an idea that can work, give it a go. If it works, great. It's not necessarily like the seaweed thing, which we're all, poisoned by.
West share my own views. I am trying to manage this group and keep the conversation moving along. I don't know if now that Robert is a TV superstar, if success has gone to his head and he will forget all of us.
So aptly put, Alex. I don't really think success like that is going to affect me in any way whatsoever. I'm too committed actually to environmental and climate duties, I have to say, to have that encumbrance come over me, to be honest with you. What I do want to talk about briefly, while I've got a connection, is the farcical situation with the Azerbaijan climate finance.
I must tell you, Robert, that your TV appearance has had 48 views so far.
Well, the things are looking up then, aren't they?
No,
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. That's just YouTube. It's streamed in multiple locations.
Andrea, I'm relying on you to get the millions involved in looking at what material we look at. All right.
I dream of it, dolls.
Yes, I thought you might say something like that. I will actually touch now on the climate finance situation with this latest COP29 conference. And I will put into context here the 250 billion until 2035 that's expected actually to blanket cover and safeguard countries from the ravages of the collapse that corporates are still playing out like some sort of sick poker game on millions and billions of people across our planet. I'm afraid to say we all know that this conference is the sickest of jokes. It cannot continue in its present format. It's not just me saying that, although I have been banging on about it for quite a while. In my opinion, this is what needs to happen now. The conference in its present in its mechanics of its present state, they have to be disbanded is the word I think I need for it. What has to happen now, I truly believe that small conferences across our planet in respective countries have to now take place that are actually run by environmental groups and environmental organizations. If you will, I will put it like this, mini COP conferences that are actually run by environmental and climate and green organizations to actually get to the very heart of everything that's now needed, with absolutely zero input from any fossil fuel executives, any fossil fuel lobbyists, and zero input from anyone to do with the oil industry, if we want to actually see safeguarding for the people of our planet and the countries and the situations that now need to be covered in their entirety for getting real on acting on the climate emergency. We do need mini conferences now, but they must not play any part in the hands of the oil industry and their makeup or their mechanisms whatsoever. I believe now that that must be a fundamental change that now takes place. To even think about a COP30 under its present mechanics and situations is beyond a joke. It's the sickest of travesties. It surely cannot, this farce cannot be drawn out for much longer. I have to honestly say that in all entirety. And I will continue to push actually for many COP conferences, as I put them, which I do believe can succeed in all countries if they're run in the right and proper way, with the right diligence and the right intelligence put into them. I think they can actually be a winner for communities, a winner for the people, a winner for the environment, a winner for the climate, and a winner all round. I also believe actually that specialist financing now must take place, that must be committed green ecological financing, if I can put it like that, which is a complete departure from any sort of financing of the climate that we've had to endure from the big corporate banks, which in my opinion, and I'm sure you don't need me to tell you here, has been sorely wanting in all capacities over the past decades in its ability to actually fairly encompass climate finance for the greater majorities of people and the respective countries that continue to be on the front lines of the dire emergencies that we see day by day. I do believe now that we have to actually turn this entire mental process of the way that conferences are put together for the good of the people in their millions and billions. So those are crucial points that I felt that I had to come back and add on my views that can fundamentally change the face of COP conferences forever if these abilities are put into place. So I'll leave it at that for now while I've still got
Robert, have you got the figures with you before you're still on? Do you have the
still
figures
on,
of what they
Oliver,
dished
yeah.
out? What they dished out?
Yeah,
for
what I
Lawson?
do know is, Oliver, without breaking it down and going back offline to check every minute detail again.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, the 250 billion that was
That's the
put
one.
out
Fuck,
as
honestly.
until 2035 is a joke.
250 million. Yeah, they owe 100.
235 billion, I think it was,
Oh,
Oliver.
no, but what they actually dished out was some
yeah.
petty figure, like 300 million or.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I will say, Oliver, without interrupting you, that I truly believe now that the figure should be in the trillions. I'm not.
Yes, that's
it's
right.
not
Yes,
just me
absolutely.
that's saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
No.
yeah.
The
Sorry,
minimum,
Oliver. Carry on.
the minimum is 100 billion, as you say, right? That's the minimum. That's what was agreed, I think, 3 COPs back.
Yeah.
But what the Azerbaijani people dished out was about 250 million.
Yeah.
Dear me.
Yeah, it's the sickest of jokes, to be honest with you. We're absolutely, if I can put it into these words, well, I've still got my connection. We're pig sick of seeing ridiculous, farcical playing around with, lackluster financial support for the most vulnerable countries across our planet that have done very, very little to have any bearing on the climate emergency, while we still have rich countries that are still pandering to the oil industry. It is a complete and utter travesty. A travesty to the people, to the countries, their respective countries, and to their livelihoods and to their situations within them. So yeah, absolutely. I'll leave it at that for now. While I've still got a.
That travesty, Robert, is why we're here. That's the whole point, is discussing the travesty. They drill the earth, our Mother Earth there. They just drill her up, take out all that oil, burn it all up.
Absolutely.
Oppress a whole lot of people while they're at it. That climate justice angle is always critical. Without oppressing the people, they can't accomplish their evil goals.
Too numerous to mention, as always.
Sickening, Nick, sickening. How are you, Nick, today? How are you feeling? What's going on?
I'm just taking a break today from social media in a sense, trying to anyway.
Oh, thank God, man. This social media is too much. I got 1,000 followers on Blue Sky now.
I don't understand. I've only posted like 2 things, and I've got like 100 and something followers on Blue Sky. I don't.
It's responsive.
Yeah, get everybody in the starter pack. I got a Climate Crisis Club starter pack.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful. Very thankful.
Good. I try to put everybody here right in it. And I listen to Joel. He's my pal. He's a social media genius, so I pay attention to his tips. But where does that intersect with the travesty? This is a travesty, Robert. We're living a travesty. Nate was here earlier.
It's really a catastrophe.
Catastrophe. That's what Lawsuit calls it, the climate catastrophe.
Yeah, that's exactly
what I call it. That's
Yeah.
I just can't. I agree with my queen 100%. She's dead. She's dead right on all of this. It's
and Stephen Barlow agrees with Greta Thunberg 100% too.
I love her. I love her so much.
I saw her in a great one today. Oh, I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh yes, I remember. It was in who's the circular economy woman and her partner, I think.
Kate Raworth or something.
Yeah. There's a wonderful YouTube of her. You have to see
Donut
it.
Economy.
I've shared it like mad. It's long now. Put it out, and I missed the chat. You could have been in a live chat and everything. They had Greta with some of the other people, all just nicely portrayed within it. It's just a great little production that they did, worth looking at. It's out there. I'll share it again in a minute. It's superb.
Well, we're here as a result of history. I repeat this over and over again. All of us. That's something universal. Everybody in the world, every continent, all the 15,000 cultures. Our ancestors all had their histories, and we got here to the present. And the climate justice, there is no climate, there's no solving the travesty without the people side, the justice side. They go hand in hand. If we don't have rights for gay people, there is no climate solution. If we don't have rights for women, there is no climate solution. It all goes hand in hand. And this is very clear. This is super clear to me because previously I was mostly in the human rights side, and I saw environmentalism as secondary. Julian, go right ahead, Julian.
Thank you. Are you sure no one had their hands up before me? If not, I'll carry on.
You're the co-host, man.
All
You get special privileges.
Thank you
You're
so
on
much.
top of the world there, man.
I'll be pretty brief. I was just left thinking about a question that Andrea asked Monica a while ago. Is Lula, he's got to be better than Bolsonaro, right? And this kind of resonates with me here in Mexico, because right now, here in Mexico, the party in power is called Morena. Claudia Sheinbaum, the successor to AMLO, the immensely popular president. I actually voted for him. I regret it now. A lot of people might ask me, Julian, he's got to be better than Enrique Peña Nieto, who preceded him, who was a disaster. I mean, there's no question Enrique Peña Nieto was like a grotesque travesty of corruption. He lives in Madrid now. He's ridiculously wealthy. He dates supermodels. It's a joke. And so you think this government has to be better, right? Claudia is a climate scientist, and she actually is. But one of the things that this government has certainly done, all Mexicans will have to agree on this, is that the army has taken control of just about every infrastructure that is relevant for the environment. The army builds airports, the army builds railways, the army builds highways, they build luxury hotels in the middle of the jungle in Yucatan. In the Calakmul biosphere, for example, they're building a giant hotel. It's being built by the army. And because it is being built by the army, it's seen as a project of national security. It can be subject to no scrutiny. The army in Mexico is as opaque as armies can get. Transparency, they do not do. And this applies particularly to a project that you won't hear very much about until it's already in place. And it's certainly going to succeed. And it's the transoceanic train corridor that runs across the slimmest part of Mexico. If you look at Mexico on a map, there's a part where the Gulf of Mexico is the closest to the Pacific, and that's the Bajío, the states of Guanajuato there. It's a very productive area in agricultural terms. It's an area that's been kind of abandoned, with the result that there are many indigenous peoples living there. They've lived there for a long, long time. And the army is pushing their train right through their territory, and nobody is going to stop them. This train will have a really significant environmental impact. It's essentially a barrier across Central America. I don't have to tell you guys what that means. It's a project that is likely to succeed because the Panama Canal is failing due to global warming. And I strongly suspect, I think many people here will agree, that the Panama Canal is bound to fail. And at that point, things like Mexico's interoceanic corridor will certainly become, in industrial terms, very important. It's certainly going to grow. The army is certainly going to control it. Everything will be opaque. Environmental concerns will be swept under the rug, just like they have been. I know Lee has I'm not going to repeat very much about the Tren Maya, because we've had Lee here before, and she's been brilliant. She's told us all about it. She knows all about it. She'll come back one day, I'm sure. And but the interoceanic train is part of the same imposition of massive infrastructure projects without concern for environmentalism that makes me think, are these people worse? You know, and I just really don't know anymore. I'm horrified by things like that. So thanks for letting me talk about that.
Anytime. You know, you've done a great job in all these discussions. And if I got irritated with you, I would let you know. I don't know if it's even possible. I know the Panama Canal really slowed down, right? They need a huge amount of fresh water to lift up those locks, and they just don't have that water. There are so many issues with shipping. 40% of shipping is just shipping fossil fuels around. If we got rid of the fossil fuels and drove those boats with nuclear power, wind, anything else, we wouldn't need 40% of the shipping. You just immediately drop that. You'd lessen the traffic so much. All the goddamn whales and all the fish, the whales are freaked out by the noise, all that shipping. There's nowhere in the ocean the whales can go to get away from the noise pollution. I don't know why they don't get any rights. As for left, right, and center, when we start getting far right politics, these reactionary politicians around the world, you know, getting really successful, the left starts moving to the center. Harris, your Scheinbaum, the one in Brazil, of course, Lula, they start drifting from the left into the center, even to the moderate right. You know, and then you know, it's the whole politics. The spectrum is shifted.
One quick
to,
final
yeah.
point.
Sure.
The
Sure.
Mexican government is strongly allied with Russia. That's a crazy issue for me, and that really annoys me. There's no doubt about it. They've made a big deal about that. The ongoing NAFTA trade, one pseudo threat that Mexico keeps making is, oh, we don't care about trade with the US and Canada, we'll go and have trade with Russia and China instead, which is obviously pretty ridiculous. That's not how it's going to work. But I can, at risk, I know Mexico City is crawling with Russian FSB operatives. I know this for a fact.
Politics, man. If the people want Russians, you get Russians. Politics is human. It reflects us as wacko humans very strongly. You know, these Russians are particularly wacko, and they always have been. You just read that Tolstoy, that Dostoevsky, Mr. Chekhov. You watch some Tarkovsky movies. You see Russians up to their tricks. They got 12 time zones. They got a forest like no, I don't even remember the 28% of the world's force, something like that. They got, they're an ecological key, but they're at war with Ukraine right now with the crazy guy leading them. We can't really discuss Russia yet. I wish we could. Tremendous culture, just and amazing people, and a wide, diverse people. There's not one Russian. They are not monolithic in the slightest. But they are at war with Ukraine. Most of us stand 100% with Ukraine. We don't get it. The invasion of one country with McDonald's, of the next country with McDonald's. I don't know, James. I am sympathetic to growing mushrooms, composting, and
Yeah, I mean, I know from a while
Hey,
back you guys were saying, capitalism, you can have concerns about it. I think that the capitalism can be done a lot better than it has been, and it's not inherently evil. So like we just have to keep, that in mind to some extent. I do think that our entire monetary structure leans towards borrowing from our children. Like that is one of the basis, like that I believe is a huge flaw with our whole system as a whole. But that's a whole thing that people may agree or disagree on. But I don't think it's a good system, and then everything that's built on top of that foundation has those flaws in it inherently. Like I am excited about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency for the reasons that there are things like tokenized trees, which I can put into accounts that I then gain interest in more trees that get planted because banking structures are built into these philanthropic efforts. And like stuff like that, I'm super excited about seeing capitalism being used to incentivize people to do the right thing. I think there's, always carrots and sticks, and I like carrots a lot more than sticks. So I lean that way.
it's an interesting topic. What I would want to know is, can we do capitalism without colonization? As a matter of fact, can we capitalize decolonization? That's what I would like to see. And decarbonization, both of them. Not one, not neither, but both decolonization and decarbonizing. Can that actually occur with capitalism? Now, I've got with neoliberal capitalism in particular, that Keynesian Friedman kind of capitalism, the 80s Reagan kind of capitalism, where it's money at any cost. I have some issues with that. I don't think it can be done. Again, I don't come to this from a position of, being a Google expert. I was a math wizard. I took some economics. I know something on this topic. And how can we capitalize on decolonization? In other words, we take the capital, we invest it in a decolonizing business, and then we make a profit margin. There could be an inherent contradiction in that process immediately. The capitalization, once the kings and queens of Europe started to die off, and we started to see more modern democracies, your French Revolution, your Greek Revolution, the development of the modern UK. When you get here, these nations shifted from monarchies and their mercantilism, right, into modern democratic capitalism is their economics today. And they colonized all over the world through the 19th century. Look at the scramble for Africa up to 1914. That is a product of capitalization. So the European nations colonized all of Africa in 1914 except Ethiopia. All the rest of Africa was owned by European nations. That is capitalism. There's nothing else. You can't blame something else. They militarily took over all of Africa. They put their foot on Africa's neck and said, this is our resource, give it to us. That's capitalism. So That's where we were in 1914, thanks to capitalism. Where is that same process going to solve these issues? I don't see it personally at all. I've had big arguments with people. I don't want to get into an argument on this. I don't see it. I don't see neoliberal capitalism as having any hope of getting us out of these crises that we're in today. But that's my view. I have been known to be wrong repeatedly. I said Harris would win. I said Putin wouldn't invade Ukraine. I've been wrong repeatedly. I don't forecast the future very well. Perhaps Wall Street can be taken over by green, human, decolonizing capitalists. I will hold my breath and wait. Elon Musk is not doing it. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, they are not doing it. So where are these great humanitarian capitalists that are going to save our ass? Where are they? I've heard this shit week after week here, and I haven't seen nothing for 2 years out of the capitalism community.
Well,
They're fucking murderers, all of them.
Well, I could try to help you out with that. There are a lot of people building attempts at decentralized communities and capital allocation methods. And this is actually why I'm optimistic, is because like I do see these things being built. I understand the frustration of hearing about them and not seeing them built. But it's imperfect. I'm not saying that the solutions are perfect, but we have to work from where we are. And where we are is deep in this trench of a very rude and mean form of capitalism. Like you said, it's money at all costs. So what money represents, what money is, why it has value, we need to evaluate that as individuals and as societies and restructure financial systems like from their roots. And that's where a lot of people are like, how do you do that? And to some extent, it goes back to borrowing and like to the bartering systems and trade. And then because most of these systems, people, these communities are trying it, they don't have the backings of those millionaires and billionaires because those people don't want this system to change. They are in the places of power that they are because this system does exist and it does function as you've said. But if we take these, the ability to be like, this is value, and this has an exchange in that economy, even though that economy is destructive by nature, like you said, it's money at all costs. So you making money focused on doing something that is positive, good for people and planet. And that conceptual shift in the individuals will just incentivize people to do more of the things like composting or feeding hungry people. And it's a challenge to not only build these systems, but then to get people to participate and understand that it takes trial and error to improve a system. A lot of people don't even want to question the system that exists because it puts your entire world in a questionable perspective. If we look at what really backs dollars, it's not great from an environmental perspective, but we all still use dollars. We're all still in this system, whether we want to be or not. And that's like, we have to start from here. Like I said, like I'm just optimistic. You know what I mean? I've seen where these things have done good and they've helped people. And I agree, it's not enough, right? There's just all hands on deck. We're way behind. And we need to address these systems. Like you were saying, the environmental crisis is, social integrity. People need their rights. They need to be respected. Our financial institutions don't respect people or the planet at all. And that is where the fundamental shift needs to change if people that don't understand, who are money at all costs, are going to get on board on this. They need to be like, okay, this is what I do to make money because money is good. That's not a hard thought. It's not even an accurate thought, but it's the thought that a lot of people have, I feel like. So you just have to shift that. But that is governments, that's huge corporations that are holding that in place. So you either have to try to chip away at that and change it, or to build something that you think that can grow to be at least competitive or replacement someday.
Yeah, thanks, James. And I want to make clear, I'm not angry at you in any way. And we are different generations. I'm 61. I've been working on this stuff for a long time, and I haven't seen much progress. I don't see it. And we've had this is 104, so we're 52 times 2. This is our 2-year point of doing these spaces. We've discussed macroeconomics repeatedly, gotten absolutely nowhere. And you can tell I'm pretty irritated with the world of big business, big oil, big agriculture, big aviation. I just see a lot of cheating, a lot of immoral behavior, and a lot of anti-human behavior out of those fronts. I'm not having it. I'm too old. I'm done with those people. The environment is not waiting around for us to start behaving ourselves. The trees keep getting cut down, the whales keep getting killed, the pH of the ocean keeps dropping, the heat energy in the ocean keeps going up. And we know that most of the public in the global north doesn't give a damn. Most of the politicians don't give a damn, and the businessmen certainly don't give a damn. We have discussed this for 2 years, and it's tough for me. Again, I am the elite, right? I am your Anglo-Saxon American. I am descended from those founding father people. We talk about those elites. Well, I'm sorry. I'm an intellectual elite. I'm one of those Anglo elites. I am from that class. I shouldn't be a rebel, right? I should be enjoying the white privilege, right? Like so many of my goddamn peers. I did go to the Ivy League. I did go to that oldest boys' school in America. My great-grandfather did have his obituary written in the New York Times by Mark Twain, and he was, all that nonsense. I am one of those people. So what am I doing? I understand them. That's part of why I get so irritated. I understand the white wealth. 70% of this wealth is inherited in America. Certainly in 1864, the Black American community didn't have any wealth. There are economic problem after economic problem, and we've discussed them repeatedly. James, I do appreciate your point of view. I know a bit about your life. I appreciate your optimism and your points. I'm not criticizing them again. I think PFI was next up here. I don't want to get worked up about the goddamn economics again. It is a Greek word coming from the home. And PFI is in Canada, another critical nation.
Hi there. No, I'm in Kiev, Ukraine, but I'm from Canada.
I see. Well, how is Kiev doing these days?
Snow just melted. It's a little warmer than it was a couple days ago, but it's getting colder. I wanted to add to what you're saying, and I really appreciate all that you do, Alex. And thanks for liking and following our page on Facebook for PFI Ukraine. And I just wanted to add to what's been said that, the capitalist system that we have, it's not perfect. It's not that great, but it's supposed to work better. There's a lot of tax havenry going on. The elites are hoarding their money instead of putting it into other social programs. The environment is probably just one of the most neglected of all the social programs that's being underfunded due to the wealthy elites sending their money into tax havens offshore instead of keeping it in the economy in whatever country, United States, Canada. There's supposed to be a system of donations to social causes as a means of relieving your tax burden. That's what I do in my organization, nonprofit NGO PFI Ukraine. I've written tax receipts that have been accredited by the CRA, the Canadian Tax Rate Agency. And that's how charitable and nonprofit corporations are supposed to operate. People that have tax burdens are supposed to contribute. Instead of donating to the government, we're supposed to donate to social causes, but they don't. Trillions of dollars goes to actual tax havens offshore, and it doesn't end up in social programs. That's why our world is so fucked, because so many oligarchs and wealthy elites and mega corporations that brag about how wealthy they are. At the same time, they're failing to reciprocate and contribute to the social causes that are destroying our planet, not just with the environment, but so many other social causes are being neglected through tax havenry. And we've seen these publications like Mossack Fonseca and Panama Papers come out that prove that this is what's going on. It's all documented, and somehow they're still getting away with this. And if only we had more contributions to social causes through tax breaks to the wealthy, we would have a better world.
Well, we're working for that better world. And by some kind of miracle for the last 3 hours, we have not discussed the Lakota people. I'm not sure how that happened. And the Native Americans, the North American natives, the people of Turtle Island, they're still here. I'm not sure how I can forget, as I seem to be discussing life so often with the people of Turtle Island, the natives of Turtle Island. I don't know. I mean, you've got this amazing thing going on. We're the richest nation in the history of the world. 25% of the world's wealth, all this Ford Motor Company, all this Microsoft, whatever the heck it is, the gigantic United States. And the people who've been here for 20,000 years are here. You've got a funny thing going on there. And I'm supposed to be talking global environmentalism, with Dr. Mike during the week. I'm supposed to be talking American politics. And what happens? I start talking about the Lakota people. Yesterday, we were even talking to Nase from the great Ojibwe nation. And why is this? What is this conversation that I keep getting into? Why does my intuitive path, keep leading back to the great Lakota nation? I don't know, but I trust my instincts. I think so many of these problems we're discussing globally, politics, economics, people, war, I think Lost and Pup and the others have great contributions to the conversation.
But they're not talking.
Well, thank God. I mean, those two, man, they talk as much as I do. It's incredible. No, they're very, very bright and kind people. And that is where our path goes. We have heard David's proposals more and more.
Alex,
about-
I wanted to say, I'll lose this thought. The reason that
Yeah.
you're avoiding the economics is because you want to be going back into the Native American way of living and looking at the world. But the economics, all these oligarchs and these ogres like
Well,
Milos-
first of all, I'm not avoiding economics.
No, no,
Again,
no,
it's a
no,
huge
not
word.
hearing-
I
no, you're
talk
not
about
hearing-
economics more than any other subject
you're not
in
hearing-
these spaces. Avoiding
No,
is
no,
not the right
You're
word.
not hearing what I'm saying. You're all right. You're diverting away onto the Native American subject because
They have economics too,
No,
Oliver.
I understand, but what I'm trying to say to you is that that's
Yeah.
a way of life you're looking for, a way of life of being, a natural way of life that goes back down, I don't know, 40, 60,000 years. But unfortunately, we have all these ogres with all this money that they're not investing in anything that's worthwhile, hoarding it,
Right.
putting it onto offshore islands and so on. And that's getting in the way. That's blocking the path to getting to those places. So whenever the subject
Absolutely.
comes up about money, about economics, it's like, we don't want to talk about that because it's it's blocking everything. It's constipating everything in our world, and it is a huge problem. And PFI, what he said just now is absolutely true. You know, we've just and of course also, you know, Mem was saying it as well. We have to live with this capitalism, but unfortunately, we're not living with capitalism. We're living with billionaires, millionaires, oligarchs, this whole host of people, of ultra rich people who are basically killing the earth for their own selfish, whatever needs, I suppose. And that's why we do really need to fight our way through that jungle or that thicket of those people and somehow get back to a better way of life. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. I'm sure of it.
Well, the topic of economics. I mean, again, it's a Greek concept. It's a Greek word. And we have to have trade. We have to have the goods and products traveling around. We have to have food. The farmer grows the food. We've heard from Farmer Ed. He's a great expert in growing food. We are not all farmers. You get back to Plato and his discussions in the Republic. We have to trade. We have to have the farmer handing the food out and the man who makes the houses, the housing, does his role, and each person in society does their role. You can get into Kant and his theories of societies. We can get into Hume and Smith. I've gotten into all these topics over and over and over again in these spaces. We can frame the story as the evil super rich. We can go that way, that are hoarding all the resources, not sharing, and creating all these disasters. We can get into the roots of how were these social super rich created? Why do they exist in the present? What was it in our past? You know the way I approach that. I go back to ancient Rome. And if you look at the Romans, you will see the rich landowners around the city of Rome who figured out these methods of power, and they colonized right from the Middle East to Great Britain. And you know, those guys in Great Britain and France, they were very loose city-states. It depends how you want to use the. Let's just talk to Stephen. That's what I vote for. Just in time, Stephen. Where are you? How are you? What's going on? Glad to see you. If Stephen, I don't know where Stephen's been. I'm delighted he's here. He was chatting with Lyle. That's the last I remember hearing from Stephen. Public perception can and will change very quickly. This is true. We saw with Pearl Harbor. It flipped immediately.
Sorry, Alex. I didn't have my microphone on.
No problem. No problem. How are you?
Not too bad.
I'm glad to hear it. You are an ecologist, a lifelong ecologist living on that British island. The web of life, the life in that 8 billion cubic kilometers in that Dyson sphere around this earth, you're a specialist in the whole thing. How life flows around the 5 or 7 kingdoms, the animals, the insects, the plants, the single cell microbes, right? The relationships of all that life, the huge one life, and then all the little bits of life all flowing around. You have some kind of great insight into all that. Is that fair?
Well, the main insight I have is how little I know and how little we know. We only know a tiny fraction of what can be known. So much that can be known that even a specialist can only know a teeny little part of it. it's one of those things. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Well, these brains of ours are 20 watts. They're not using much electricity, and yeah, we certainly have our limitations. And then the group, when we add our shared knowledge together, there's that synergetic effect where 3 humans are equivalent to 9.
Yeah.
3 human brains are equivalent to 9. When we work together and accept each other, our brain power combines synergetically.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're worth knowing. Yeah.
We always work better together.
Absolutely, especially we don't fight. Absolutely. But my point about your ecological knowledge is you've spent a lifetime studying this, so you know much more than I do, or many of the others who have not been studying this particular field. Besides the fact you have a natural talent for ecology, you just instinctively understand it.
Yeah,
Since
as
you
a
were very
child,
little.
I was thinking about it.
And yeah,
go on.
The habitats, the world, 8 billion cubic kilometers is cut up into habitats. Why don't we ask Pup what he's thinking? Go ahead, Pup. Hi.
Well, I'm working on cup number 1, so be prepared for a little bit of incoherence.
Ecology is the topic. What do you think of ecology? The bear, pine trees, the bugs, the cherry trees.
I was going to go back to economics for a second.
Oh, no.
Was in need of something. It was just given to them. There is what's the word? I told you there's going to be some incoherence here. If I need a bow, I can walk up to any tribal member and literally say, I want your bow. And they have to give it to you. What keeps that from running rampant is at the same time, once I get the bow, if I have a really nice horse, that individual I just got the bow from can say, well, I need your horse. So people tend, for tens of thousands of years, learned that if the tribe isn't aware of your situation and you're in need, and it just gives it to you, whatever it is that you need, you are entitled to find what you find that possession someplace in the tribe, and then acquire it. It's so where I'm going with that is that was tribal, that was native, and then we get the white guy in here. Sorry, folks, we get the white guy in here, and he wants more and more and more and more. He wants more than what he needs, and more than what his tribe can support. And if you want to blow that up and take a look at America, we've got a handful of billionaires who couldn't possibly spend all that money in their lifetime. They or won't use that money for the betterment of the rest of the people, the less fortunate one. And we have a word for that, for an individual like that. We call them Wasichu, which loosely translated means self. Um, Unfortunately, over 150 or 200 years, that term Wasichu has been pretty much allocated to white folk. But talking, Alex, you're fascinated with the Lakota, and I would just counsel that, once again, we knew how to do it, and in touching on ecology, you know, I don't want to sound like like I'm Lakota traditions are the end all of end all, but we figured out the ecology without knowing a single bit of science. We figured out how to live with it and live and be a part of it and not fuck it up. Um, we didn't have to have microscopes and scientific method and all the rest of that stuff. Quite literally, over tens of thousands of years, we just figured out how to not fuck ourselves in the environment and how to make it work. How do you become part of what and where you're living? And again, it's so Situ that those that would take the best part of the meat for themselves. It's greed, and there isn't enough enough penalties um, right now for an individual to go out and do something that is detrimental. That in a small band of humans would never have flown and didn't fly for literally tens of thousands of years. If you were doing something that ultimately would hurt the individuals in your group, you were ostracized. You got reset real quick. But we don't have that today. And we haven't had that for, I don't know, since America was formed. Since Columbus. We helped them out and helped them figure out how to survive, and then they got greedy, literally. And now we live on little itty bitty patches of ground that are absolutely worthless. The casinos are an example of how tribes fight back. Tribes fight back. I mean, casinos. By definition, an individual walks in a casino and they take all his money. Revenge is hell, payback's for a motherfucker, I guess. It's why the casinos are called the White Buffalo or the New Buffalo. Anyway, I need more coffee, and I'm not terribly coherent here, so I'll shut up.
Thanks, Bob. Some good points, because of course capitalism is not the only economic system in the world. Let's get back to Stephen. I wonder what
my friend today. I can be quite certain of this because no indigenous culture I'm aware of has ever made this core thinking error, and they all intuitively understand that we must live within the planetary boundaries of natural systems. They don't need to explain. But I think what Pop was that was the basis of that relationship, wasn't it?
ended up doing is I made bonds, strong bonds with all the individuals that live around me. Now, you know, again, my nearest neighbor is a mile away. But what I'm trying to, what I, in an addenda to what Stephen was saying is you can't do it by yourself. You have to be part of a group, and that group has to, by definition, has to cooperate with each other. Otherwise, the group as a whole will fail, and the individuals are part of the group, so the individuals fail. And it's that you're right, Steve. It's that reciprocity thing. But you shouldn't have to get to the reciprocity. In my mind, has a negative connotation. You shouldn't have to get to that where it's a negative thing.
Well, it's not reciprocity. We're talking about communal
neighborliness, just neighborliness. That'll do.
That was a balance, right? No one taking more than they need, right? Because people see it from the same sort of thing. They know if someone takes more than what they need, and that's not going to make them very popular with everyone else.
Yeah, imagine having a Musk as a neighbor.
Yeah, that was in societies where we could see what everyone had.
we had the social mechanisms, yeah.
We got the Thanksgiving coming up in the United States this week. That started some lively conversation yesterday. Some people call it thanks for nothing. And Lost it will be a day of mourning for him. We had a lively conversation on Thanksgiving yesterday where Lost said, if you see a homeless indigenous person on the street, invite them to your Thanksgiving meal, share your food with them. And I agree 100%. There was some controversy over that statement. We all got in some trouble. I have trouble saying reciprocity, but reciprocity is a key concept. This taking and taking and taking, we're just all going to die if we all just keep taking. It's not a survival mechanism. It's doomed to failure if we take and take and take. I've repeated ad nauseum that I'm Greek. Maybe Floofy and Johnny aren't here today, so perhaps I, after a while, do miss my Greek cousins. But the Greek society too, if you go to a little village in Greece, they don't take and take and take. If it's 120 degrees out, they offer you water and shade. The hospitality, they don't do that kind of thing, just like Pup was talking about.
That was the tradition around the world. And interestingly, this isn't confined to humans. I mean, I can't off the top of my head name all the studies, but they've done it with chimps. And if one chimp takes too much, it's not considered, you know, tries taking a lot for themselves. The others are likely to, you know, be pretty annoyed about it. And there's a lot of animals, and I've even seen that with. I remember watching some rooks there, like crows. Rooks are they were communal nesters, where one of them it stole a twig out of another one's nest when it wasn't looking, and the other one chased it all around the field, right? And then it flew back, and it was cawing like mad after, really complaining about this. You know, saw it totally out of order. And so it's not just humans that notice when people get greedy and take too much for themselves.
In most canine species, I'm thinking of wolves in particular, they operate in the same way. You know, it's a pack mentality. It's why a pack of wolves can successfully survive in a frozen environment in the winter because they work together, and for the betterment of the pack. Anyway,
I want to say hello to Kemoshi there, who has Bertrand Russell on his picture page there, and tell him that my grandmother hosted Bertrand Russell for dinner in the 20s, Gramercy Park. When he came to dinner at my grandmother's house, he was very confused that there was no food. They were just all drinking evening away. But I would like to welcome you here. Anti-fascist till I die. That's good enough for all of us.
Thanks.
Yeah. What can I ask you? Which part of the world you're in?
I'm in the UK at the moment, but I'm American. I'm from California originally.
I hear you, man. Cool enough. So welcome. It's an actual club we're in, many of us, and this is an actual club meeting. And we discuss global environmentalism, ecology, climate, or whatever you feel like talking about.
Yeah, what's all
And
related, so yeah, that's great.
whatever you have in mind, you posted Matthew Todd. He's cool. You posted Stephen Barlow. We love Stephen. He's one of our original members 2 years ago. Stephen was right here. He is always fascinating on life, biology, ecological systems, habitats, and we can discuss practically anything, actually.
Well, that's great. I mean, my background is more cultural anthropology, but I'm fairly knowledgeable about most things.
So you probably know all about Graham Hancock. We're good pals with Dr. Hoops from the University of Kansas, archaeology, anthropology. And I personally really like the study of anthropology myself. I find it absolutely fascinating. And these groups of people that are this space itself is a form of experiment or an art project or a mystical get together or whatever you would like to be. But in the dynamics of this digital socializing, we've cut down a whole lot of the variables, right? There are no physical cues, very few. And it's fascinating to see how people act in these groups. So many of them want to roll when they join our group here. They assume I'm the president, right? They assume I'm the leader. We're actually a democracy. Stephen and Oliver have been here the entire time. Pup has been here quite a lot. Sandra and Julian are newer, but they're very valued, and on and on and on. So to see how people seek groups, seek groupings is just fascinating in this context of these spaces.
Oh yeah, the aggregation.
What's that?
The aggregation.
Aggregations, exactly. The social aggregations, how that works, it's fascinating, and it's real here. Now we can listen to Pup, who was up late last night, driving people around in his electric car around northern Minnesota. He's had a cup of coffee. He's getting some ideas cranking.
yeah, I went to bed at 5:09 this morning.
Oh, you rock star, you, man.
Oh, God. Anyway, I learned something about that electric car, by the way. So I'm blowing down the highway headed home, and it only stays in Super Cruise self-driving when it has an hyper accurate map of whatever road you're on. Well, typically stoplights, they've specifically removed those maps. So when you come up, you get within, I don't know, a tenth of or 2/10 of a mile of a stoplight, it flashes red and says, I don't have good mapping data. If you don't take control of the wheel, and it's got sensors in the steering wheel, if you don't take control of the wheel fast enough, it drops out of Super Cruise, turns on the four-way flashers, and uses regenerative braking to come to a complete stop. That happened to me last night on the way home. Thank God it was 3 o'clock in the morning and there wasn't anybody else on the highway. But trying to figure out, and it says Super Cruise is canceled or something like that, and you literally have to pull over to the side of the road, turn the car off, and then turn it back on. But let me tell you, at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to leaf through the fucking owner's manual and figure out how to reset that, because I really didn't want to have to. Anyway, you get the idea. It was interesting. I want to go back to relationships. So, and there's a technical term, and again, I haven't had my second cup of coffee, so I don't remember what the fucking name of the term is, but it's if I know somebody and somebody else knows somebody, it's generations of relationships or something. There's a term for that. Within 2 generations of me knowing somebody who knows somebody, that encompasses literally anything that I could ever possibly need, and spans a distance, a radius around where I am of about 100 miles. The example I'll use was 3 years ago. My driveway is 1,000 feet long. 3 years ago, my plow truck died, irreparable. And it was the middle of fucking winter, and we had snow on the ground, and it was snowing more, and out of the fucking blue, I hear some rumbling outside, and I look out, and it's my neighbor who plows for other people, and he does it based on people that he knows that are in his social sphere, and knows that they don't have a plow truck, knows that they need to get out. They're probably going to need to get out of their driveway when there's 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground. So Danny goes and plows their shit for them, and then we'll just depart. And just depart. When he gets home at night, his phone is ringing off a hook, and he's getting chewed out for, why didn't you stop and let me pay you for that? It is way different a model than I'll plow your driveway for $50, and setting up some sort of a commercial economic relationship. Danny does it because he likes plowing snow. It's kind of mindless entertainment. He's got the gear, and he likes to be in his truck out moving snow around and pushing snow around for people. Interestingly enough, the revenue stream, which is purely gratuitous, is enough. Plow trucks, they break all the time. Pickups are not designed to have 1,200-pound something hanging off the front and move snow around. They're just, even 3/4 and 1-ton pickups, they're not built to do that. But he makes enough gratuitous income to cover, replacing the pump motor, replacing that hydraulic hose, replacing, this big ass fucking spring on it, blah, blah, blah. In other words, he makes enough money, actually makes a little bit more money than when it costs him to maintain the truck, so that he can plow out his compound. And in my mind, that's the fucking way it ought to be. You should be doing things for other people, and then those other people should have enough self-awareness to say, gee, that's really nice. That was really nice of him. Let me chip him some money, which happens to be the universal piece of paper that makes our fucking world go around. Anyway, but 2 generations, I literally know somebody that can do anything that I need. And it spans the gambit from, watchmakers to nuclear scientists to mechanics to people who, farmers, people, it's just 2 generations down. And I'm trying to think of something that I might need that couldn't be serviced in that group of individuals, and I can't come up with a single fucking thing. Anyway, I'll shut up again.
Yeah, it's a collaborative existence.
Cooperative existence. I'm thinking of Eugene when he said that, 100 years from now, the United States, 200 years from now, at some point, the United States will be behaving like the 42 other, whatever, how many other industrial nations there are, where the AR-15s in it and everybody's mass shooting and shooting up each other. Eugene said in 100 years, this just won't be happening anymore. And probably Puff's economics will be happening. The sensible way to behave will be happening in the future at some point. If we don't all just slide off the cliff, that is.
That's a big if.
That's a big if, yes, granted. But I'll just accept that for now. And I am an activist. I am a climate activist. I spend all day, every day, banging my head against this wall, trying to figure out how to get this climate crisis awareness stuff going. But some people are not activists. I don't insist they are activists. That's fine. And for people who are not activists, long-termism works. That we can't afford to wait around, wait for the younger generations to grow up and cope with this stuff. So there are different types of people. And I do this election, the politics all week with Dr. Mike. I do it hoping to spread environmentalism, climate, to American Democrats, to the American left, and try to get them talking about climate. That's my goal. So I work with Dr. Mike, who's quite popular in the blue circles. And the far right won our election in the United States, which affects the whole world.
But
we've discussed.
But you really consider Democrats the left?
That's interesting. We
go.
touched on that earlier, that everything has shifted right. So Democrats are pretty much center right today, according to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
When I talk to my buddies in South Africa, the dude from Myanmar, they all think Democrats are moderate right. And it is possible that everything's really shifted right. We've talked about this. Reactionary far right is when the public in a democracy wants to slam on the brakes. It's all moving too fast. There's too much progress. I'm 61 years old. In 1990, 1980, people didn't think this would be the future. This is not the older people, the boomers. This is not their bucket list. This is not what they wanted in general. This is not, they don't know what's going on. They got the iPhone, they got social media. They're puzzled. They want to slam on the brakes. They want to go back to 1990 and live like it's then.
Well, all these things started out progressive until the IPOs came and the big corporations turned everything into advertising agencies for Google and whatever.
Sure, but you can go back to John D. Rockefeller, who owned 1% of America, the richest person in United States history by percentage. You can go back to the 1890s when corporations literally had no regulations at all.
Oh yeah, we're in the
crashed.
second Gilded Age for sure.
But 1896, with a huge crash, finally somebody got the idea of doing some federal regulations on corporations.
Well, it looks like Trump wants to go back to McKinley's day where they used the army on protesters.
Exactly. And we know these things. I'm thinking of Stephen, who was here, our old friend, and his insights into human societies, into life, his complete acceptance of indigenous societies as much as he can. And we face these social problems. We face these ills. We face these environmental ills, the biodiversity crisis, the extinction rate, the 2 to 4 species we're losing a day. We know the score. We understand. We've talked about these things endlessly. So what can we do? Stephen has been participating in every kind of environmental protest organization, everything humanly possible since the early 70s. And this is what we're trying to do today in a space, is listen to Sandra.
A nice segue. I'm kind of, and I hear you, Alex, and I'm going to go back to the whole marketing thing. There needs to be an education or re-education of people, and I may be talking about the hundreds or the 110s. I don't know how that goes, but the fact that today, I just sort of inspired myself to create a whole bunch of memes. I'll need help from people and, of course, approval. But I sort of have this idea, and then suddenly, this guy named Meme comes in, who said, "Give him." Is he still here? I got to put my glasses on. There we go. That he can spread it. He probably has one of those bot or the API and sends out all those messages. And that would be amazing if he did, if he's still in the room, but I don't know. But anyway, I'm following him. And then I'm thinking, if I could do something really provocative that would really get some attention, and then post an article like one that you guys would write, you know what I mean? And it all kind of have the same theme, was sort of this, and then blitz it, man, blitz it everywhere. I mean, that's just an idea, but I had it today. I think I need more coffee too, Pup.
Do you find Twitter still useful though, or would you use a different platform?
I'm not talking about educated people. I'm talking about trying to reach the people that we need to re-educate. Okay, so they may be the people over here.
Okay.
Yes. And of course, I mean, I don't need to spread this much. I mean, yes, we do need to spread it on Blue Sky, and we do need to say, but I'd like to, it's kind of akin to, you know, I'd like to have commercials on it on Fox News, as opposed to, you know, someone more favorable to the climate, which seems to be no one, unfortunately. All right, I'll land there. Thanks.
Thanks, Sandra.
Did you see
we do-
Sandy's? I want to say, did Sandra? Did you see Sandy's freight train coming headlong down towards an influencer who was faced away on the track? She was standing on the track, facing away, holding a phone and taking a selfie. A makeup influencer, and it got quadrillions of responses. A lot of them very heavy and unpleasant, but they were the people you're aiming to hit with your memes. You should have a look. She's here, Sandy. She'll tell you. She'll put it up probably. Yeah.
Yeah, we have men.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Oh, I just wanted to say I'm at a desperate crisis because my little emojis aren't working again. I was trying to figure out what you put up.
No,
Oh,
Sandy
that
put
one.
one up.
Okay.
Sandy put one up in the coffee
Yeah,
house.
Sandy.
You must have seen
Okay.
it with the train and the influencer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's just what you're talking about, isn't it? And it was a
Yes,
a
it's
sensation.
exactly
It was
what
an
I'm talking
absolute
about.
sensation. She'll tell you about it.
And if you can get something to go viral,
Completely,
you know,
yeah.
you'll eventually get the freaking press's attention. I don't know. I'm gonna go down I'm gonna game out some dark pathways and some light pathways. You know what I mean? I don't want to be too scary, but I
No, that
want to
was a
be
good one.
firm.
This wasn't scary, but it was very effective. You know.
Yeah, so I'll look at that definitely. I don't know if I've seen
Coffee
it,
House.
so I'll go to her
I think
timeline.
it was Coffee.
I have to go to every.
It was not last
Can you
week's, the
hear
week
me?
before Coffee House, I think. Was it last week's Coffee House? I think it was that one. But you know, you'll see
Can
it.
you hear me?
Hear Sandra?
Hmm.
Can you hear me?
They're messing with us. No, they're messing with
He
us.
doesn't hear nothing.
Maybe we should all
Okay.
start waving our hands at him.
Yeah, that used to happen all over quite a lot. We'll straighten them out. Let's say hello to Chunks in Florida. See what's going on. What's up, Chunks? You're very, very low.
We are all chunks of earth, and I want to thank you for my first.
Yeah, sure. I just can't hear you. You're very, very low.
I'm sorry.
That's a little better.
A little better.
Yeah.
I want to just real quick go back to what the gentleman was saying about helping one another without expecting anything in return, because you never know what's going to go on. Since COVID-19 started in the end of 2019, I have a 1/4 acre of land in Florida, and I decided to turn it into a food forest, bird sanctuary, butterfly sanctuary, and I spent the last 5 years improving it. I don't know if you probably can't hear the birds behind me, but I've got hummingbirds, I've got endangered species, and the fruit that I have, I'm growing bananas and avocados, uh, carambola, just a dozen things going on there. So I'm making the land give back, and I'm not charging anybody for anything I get. I just share it in hopes that people get the idea of we're all in it together. And so that's really what I wanted to share real quick, is that you're not alone, and I'm trying to do the same thing down here.
Outstanding, Chunks. Thank you. I really appreciated that little report. Come talk to us anytime. Excellent work. We discuss global environmentalism here. We discuss climate crisis and ecology and the environmental poly crisis. We provide climate support. We have some fun, and we listen to Pup a lot. I don't mind listening to Pup a lot. Matter of fact, I really quite enjoy listening to Pup a lot. The man has all kinds of knowledge, ideas, and hopefully maybe he has enough coffee in him now to really
I'm about to go fill the cup the second time. It just finished brewing. But before I do, so I was talking about community, and northern Minnesota is blood fucking red. Minnesota as a state is typically blue, but that's because, Minneapolis and St. Paul typically is overwhelmingly blue. You get out into the suburbs, it starts to get a little bit purple. And then by the time you get up to where I am, it's fucking blood red. I could probably count the number of Democrats I know personally on 2 hands. The rest are all Republicans, which in this day and age are MAGA, or at least would partially identify as MAGA. But my comment is if you take the time to talk to them on a one-to-one, and you, for instance, it's a conversation I had with Billy not too long ago, who is a hardcore vote for Trump, but for economic reasons. But you talk to Billy over beers and you say, listen, what about this abortion thing? I mean, what do you think ought to be done? And he says, well, women should be able to have abortions. And especially in the case of rape, incest, abuse, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, you don't want to continue that genetic line. And so, again, if there have been, I use a plow truck.